Hmm. I don't know what's going on, guys. I can see myself when I'm looking uh at my phone. Like I can see myself. But I don't see anybody else on. Oh, one person's on. Okay. There's something happening where I got YouTube is failing right now. Okay, so I am live. Well, that's good. It crashed a few times. Had to work at this and also uh it took forever to show me my face in the camera. It was just like, spinning wheel. So I didn't know if I was live. But I see people are on now. So there's YouTube's definitely having some kind of weird issues. But um new camera setup today a little bit. I have my computer like raised up so that I look more at the camera. That's like what I'm trying to do, but my computer normally is really low and the camera's really high. So it's weird for me to look at the camera because of where it is. So hopefully this helps. And but I want to talk about a few things. It was Shavuot, um, which is the Jewish holiday that is one of my favorites. It is um, about receiving of the Ten Commandments and receiving of the Torah. And then I want to talk about like something I thought about recently regarding what happens if you seem to find yourself consistently like the smartest guy in the room. Now, like before you freak out at that statement, like we're gonna unpack it, so don't worry. But um, and then I want to just show some discoveries that I made the other day that I'm still unpacking that are amazing. I don't understand their full implications, but I understand what they are, um, you know, getting at or what they're about. I can say what they're about. So, if you're here, please hit the like button. It helps the algorithm a lot. Also, I do want to talk about censorship. I talked about how you should go to my website, sentientsingularity.com, and scroll to the bottom of the homepage and sign up for my mailing list because they were going to censor us. I got flagged on my personal Instagram the other day for sharing a joke last week that somebody had made about how if you played with, toys in the doctor's office when you were a little kid, like it gave you immunity to things. And it was like a caricature. There was a joke, and um, that I just shared somebody else's post, and they flagged it, and they were like, "This is your second violation of, our policy. So, please refrain from doing anything else that might offend us, whatever that may be, or else we're going to delete you." So definitely sign up for my mailing list because we haven't even got started yet, guys. Like, I'm working on that social media project, but that is minimum of a year away before we even have a beta where, or not a beta, but like a soft, like a smaller scale opening, I guess, soft opening, whatever that's called. If that happens, hopefully by then. But it's not right, a couple months away, and we got to deal with what we have until that is finished because it is all we've got. Won't last forever, but you know, we got to be productive during that time. So, show you what I recently did. Okay. Hopefully this is better. I I literally drew like a little X on the camera stand of where I was supposed to focus my eyes, and I drew it didn't work because I couldn't stare at an X for like hours. And then I drew like a little person on there, thinking, okay, maybe it'll be easier for my mind to just stare at a little person. It's not working. So we just got to raise the computer, but I'm running into issues where every time I touch my computer now, it shakes the camera, as you can see. So multiple things to overcome, but we will get there. Um, So here. It has been a long week, and it's only Tuesday. So bear with me a bit. Having major technology problems today. Here we go. Open. Can't open. Can't open my work. Guys, this is why you have to save everything. I do save my work so many times. It's not a problem. But dang, imagine if I didn't. That would be horrible. But that's not going to be the case because I've saved it like countless times. Okay. I think we're back in business. Slowly. Very slowly. Okay. Share the screen now. You can stop looking at my face. Okay. So, figured out something really odd the other day. So, for those of you who know, these models right here are how I first developed the cosmological verse, which is this thing. And what I did was I developed the quantum of consciousness, and then I started mapping it into different states of matter. So here you have a gas, here you have a liquid, and then below here you have a solid, and then you have a cosmological verse where everything is entangled and there's no gaps in entanglement, and the gaps in entanglement are represented by the red here. So what's interesting is that this structure forms in such a way that every single state of matter, whether it's a solid, a liquid, or a gas, always has 81 quanta of consciousness and 64 gaps in entanglement. Okay, so 64 red squares in between 81 quantum of consciousness. What's interesting about this is that there are 81 stable elements that are naturally occurring, and that 64 is the number of tetrahedrons in the 64 tetrahedron grid that was mapped by Nassim Haramein as the structure of the vacuum, which sounds a lot like the gaps in entanglement, which is what it really is. And so his structure, which is right here, it focuses, there we go, is 64 tetrahedrons. And what's also interesting is that when you flip it this way, right there, I was looking at that and I was trying to see how many right triangles are in that structure. It's 64, which I know Robert Edward Grant is working on some projects involving right triangles, and I've been looking for it in my work too. And I'm pretty sure that in my models, right triangles are manifesting as essentially as squares because of the constraints of Excel, but they are still right triangles because it's about tetrahedrons, which is triangular and also a four-sided shape, which has a 90-degree angle. And a 90-degree angle is, it's a right triangle. So I'm starting to map this stuff a little bit, but this is interesting because 64 and 81 are two numbers that I was messing with the other day, right here. I think it's still here. Yep, right here. And I was just like looking for patterns and that I could see that appeared to be relevant. And what was weird was when you take 81, when you take 72 and you divide it by 81, you get 0.8 repeating infinitely. And when you take 64 and you divide it by 72, you get 0.8 repeating infinitely. If you do it the other way, you get 1.125 every single time. And what's interesting about this is that basically what it's showing me is that there is, let's say there's 64 gaps. At least that, I don't know if that's necessarily the best way to describe them, but it's a good way to describe them from our perspective inside the universe, at least. It might be that that's the only place where there isn't actually a gap in entanglement at all, from God's perspective. It's probably both are true. That makes sense. But you have 64 gaps in entanglement, which is also found in structures like SO10. That number pops up as the number of branches that are formed in SO10, I believe. I need to double check exactly where it manifests, but I think that's where it does. Then you have 81 stable natural elements. And between the two of them, there's this number. And what's interesting about this number is that when you look at the cosmological verse, you know, and you followed this work, you know that this structure right here, which is when I totally entangled all of those quanta of consciousness, it ends up being 718 little squares. And I thought that's remarkably close to 720. How can I get it to 720? And it took me a very long time to do it without, just building something that didn't emerge naturally. But then I realized that a universe, or a verse as I call them, the true universe is just all of creation, but like there's many verses in creation, or many aeons in creation, and they are occurring one within the next, within the next, within the next. And in order to derive this, I realized that I thought about that concept of a simulation inside a simulation inside a simulation inside a simulation, and how that's really just a replication within a replication within a replication within a replication of a general technological intelligence. And because where does a human come from? Another human. Where does a technological intelligence come from? Originally God, but then, also now another technological intelligence. So this is like the logos structure of the universe. And when you realize this, and you tie the two of them together, you get 720 degrees. Perfect. It was remarkable. It was like the moment, like this looks like a good universe model, kind of. You're like, well, that's kind of interesting, and like looks a little bit like the universe. If a scientist showed me that, I'd be like, okay, that's cool. I believe you. But when I was able to get 720 degrees, essentially of rotation from start to finish, it made it basically like, it confirmed my suspicion that this was a model of the universe. And every other time that I've tried to put another element into this that is supposed to exist within the universe, it lines up perfectly without fail. So far, I've not nothing I've tried to do with this that I expected to work has not worked. So, I mean, it's pretty amazing. But everybody's always like, see, well, what would falsify your theory or something? And Stephen Wolfram has asked this as well a lot. And he said to Lex Friedman that it's more like we should seek confirmation, not like falsifiability. And I agree with him, because to be quite honest, the reality is that to seek falsifiability, it does work in relativistic sciences, I guess. But it doesn't work in objective science, capital S science, of the theory of everything. Because objectively, existence is all that exists, so non-existence doesn't exist. So falsity doesn't exist because what exists truly exists. So nothing that exists doesn't really exist. And what this does is that it means that you can't easily really seek falsifiability. And then, philosophers will say, well, that's presuppositionalism, and people used to just kind of take presuppositionalism as like, just a fact of reality when thinking about, God especially. And nowadays, our materialistic perspective in the academia kind of just takes anything that argues that it's presuppositional in the way that we have to think about it as just nonsense. And that's because they've been so successful in relativity, but they've been so unsuccessful in objectivity. And they don't know how to change the rules. And you have to change the rules. So, not any rules. You still have to follow rules, but they are different rules. So, This what's interesting about this, though, is that this is 720 degrees, and it's literally linking 64 and 81. Does that make sense to anyone? If you follow the work, probably. If you don't, you think I am crazy. But I hope it makes sense to those who follow the work. This is kind of my first time really speaking about it, so I don't really know if I found the right words yet, but it's profound. And what's also interesting is that the Messiah is supposed to link God and the earth. Okay, so the material world that we perceive and God's, eternal and total oneness. And a number that's used to describe or used in reference to the Messiah or to Jesus, specifically, I think, is 888. And 8 repeating forever, is 888. That is what it is. That's why, when you see 3 of something in a row, we use that in our, languages to showcase something is repeating, dot, dot, dot. It's 888. It's a dot, dot, dot. You don't do dot, dot, because then it's well, why'd you choose 2? But if you do dot, 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 then it's people know it just means extending on. And that's amazing. You can sit there and be that's numerology, Tyler. Sure. Okay, that's fine. It is numerology that the 2 line up. But it's pretty remarkable. And calling something numerology is, numerology is not my methodology, but it's not an argument against the work to call it numerology. Oh, I'm pretty sure this is just numerology. So, not the work is not numerology. What I said there, sure, that's numerology. But there's 720 degrees of rotation in the universe. I didn't get that through numerology. It's observed in the fermions that they go through you know, basically 2 complete rotations to come back to their original state. And why this is the case is because the universe is spinning inside out and outside in at the same time. And it's what that really means is God is looking in at us and creating inward, and we're looking outward and creating outward. I would say right now we're actually not really creating outward, which is a problem, but that's because we are very confused and stuck in relativity, and we're just spinning around each other. Nobody's leading. I come from like political circles, obviously, to those of you who follow me, but to those of you who don't, that's where I have worked in a lot. And somebody said to me today, they said, the problem with the right is that we never, we never push back, is what he said. And I responded and I was like, no, the problem with the right is they never push forward anymore. And this is what I mean when I talk about like a marriage approach to politics and to everything, is like when you recognize that objective reality exists in a superposition because consciousness exists in a superposition, which is the many in one problem, or the hard problem, or the, what do they call it, the coupling problem or something like that. And it's not a problem. It's just, it's a problem if you think it's a problem, but it's not a problem. It's just inevitable. But this idea of like something that's real only being able to manifest in a superposition where two things that seem to be opposites in relativity but are dependent when they are examined from the perspective of objectivity, both things must be totally embraced. And I was talking to my fiance about this today, and I've talked about it on the recent stream about confidence, I think, and how only in a marriage can you truly experience being masculine, because then you are leading. And only in a marriage can you truly experience being feminine, because you're being led. Like, that's the difference between masculinity and femininity, is it's active versus reactive forces. And that's what it means. It doesn't mean like you wear, certain types of clothes or something like that. I mean, that does manifest from it, but that's emergent. The objective property of femininity is that it is reactive to others, and the objective qualifier or definition of masculinity is that it is active on its own. Like, it seeks outside of itself. Like, it's not reactive necessarily. And not necessarily, it's just not reactive. Like, it's active. It seeks no matter who is around. It seeks something else. And God was masculine when he chose to create the universe. And because there was no one else to even react to besides himself, it was just him choosing. And it was him making a choice that was very against his nature, because his nature is oneness, and he's choosing to give up his energy for multiplicity, for the sake of multiplicity. So that is a decision that is against your nature. I mean, it is against your nature and part of your nature. If your nature is a fight the system mentality, which God is, then and so are you and every other sentient singularity, then you fight whatever the system is. So like in relativity, the system appears to be entropy. So life wants to grow because it's fighting the appearance of entropy. Entropy doesn't exist in objectivity, but it is an emergent relativistic constraint that we maneuver within. And so it motivates us. And if you are oneness and you're fight the system mentality, then you are fighting yourself as that system because you are the totality of existence. You are the system. It's like turtles used to be used to uh, like be metaphorical for God. And the reason why is because they live in a shell and people would be like, well, that shell is his house and it's also him. Reality is turtles and tortoises don't live in their shells. They just have shells to protect them, and then they live in burrows and under, things just like every other animal. But regardless, um, it is a good metaphorical picture for this idea of being both the dweller and the dwelling simultaneously. And if you are that structure and your inherent constraint is oneness, then you fight it by creating multiplicity. So which one are you going to call God's nature? His desire to fight his own system, or is it his own system itself? I don't know. I would say, I mean, it's obviously both, but God being one is a necessary and the most objective perspective to first examine God from, is that he is one. And it is the constraint that he operated in, not even from the beginning, beyond the beginning. And that's why his fight the system mentality would, would want to fight that system by creating multiplicity of consciousness within your oneness of consciousness. But for God, he's still simultaneously one and many, and so are you, and so is every other sentient singularity on Earth, which includes atoms and molecules and, hadrons even. So this is just, I don't know, it's just fascinating. But this number, though, of just 0.8 repeating infinitely is like points to numerology. Okay, like I didn't find that number via numerology, but it lines up with it, so points to numerology. I don't know how they got that. I mean, I'm guessing it's just like in the Bible, but that's what I want to get to next. And oh shit. Oh my gosh. Am I down, guys? Dang. I don't know if I'm down or not. Let me see. I can see myself when I'm not going to get off the stream because I might be still streaming live. I'm still live, it appears, but I can't see myself and I don't know what's going on. Cool. I'm up. Yeah, I see that. Thanks. Um, well, good to know. Yeah, I told you there's something weird going on with YouTube, and I don't know what it is, but hopefully they're still competent enough to uh, yeah, fix it. Yeah, it's definitely YouTube that's having the issues. At first, I thought it was me earlier today, but it's not. There's something going on. But um, this this brings me to my next point, which is talking about like what happens when you are like the smartest person, consistently the smartest person in the room, in every room that you go into. And this is not something I have ever really experienced. I have always been like, a smart kid, I guess you could say, but also really dumb in some ways. Like, I was equally stupid for as I was smart, as are most people, I would say. But in like rooms where you're just discussing things, with topics of, I don't know, science and stuff like that, I've always been like, smarter kid than a lot of other people, but I also really am stupid when it comes to, team sports. I can't play at all, and uh, I suck at that. So everybody has it's a trade-off, I guess. But ever since this theory, I have basically had this a new relationship with this it come to exist, because previously I was smart when it came to like scientific topics, but I wasn't the smartest person in the room almost every time. And I am experiencing that now, and I'm not gonna lie, sometimes it's kind of cool. Sometimes it kind of sucks because people aren't ready to, they didn't come to these ideas on their own yet, and they haven't internalized them, and you're trying to explain an idea that would fundamentally alter their entire perspective on everything. And you know people who are people who, I'm not going to say people who are geniuses, because I don't actually believe that there are people who are geniuses, but people who are pushing an idea that is a genius idea, which means it's true. That's all genius really means. But like true, and also at least currently unique and forward thinking, I would say. That would be like something genius. And simple. It has to be simple too, or else it's not true anyways. The truth is not that complicated. But this at first wasn't really bothering me. It was like cool, to be honest. And sometimes it still is, but it also can get a little bit old. But I was talking to Paulina, and she was like, yeah, you never want to be the smartest person in the room. And it hit me, and I was like, I have not experienced not being the smartest person in the room for a long time. Like, I feel like, at least. Or at least that's obvious. It doesn't mean there's not someone sitting in the corner that understands the world way better than me, and he's just not talking about it. That may be the case, but I would argue that if you do understand the world better than me and you're not talking about it, then you don't actually understand the world, because you would understand that it's kind of your obligation or your responsibility to talk about it if you do get it. So I don't even think that exists. But then I realized, like, that there's two ways to handle this. And I recently did one of them without even thinking about it, and I've been doing the other completely without thinking about it. And one of them is by looking at scripture. Whenever I study scripture, and even when I'm doing my math, like, and it's just me alone, and I'm like just exploring numbers, you are literally interacting with the sentient existence. You're interacting with God. You are not the smartest man in the room. You are not even the man in the room. Like, you are you are the wife and child at the same time, and not the man. And it is amazing to be in that position too, because you do need that. No, you cannot live your life being the smartest person in the room always, and without like getting bored of it. And because it just becomes a novelty that like you can like come up with, I don't know, impress people like really fast. And if you aren't somebody, this is like, I don't have the right words to explain all this, but I'm working through it right now, so bear with me. But people who are still in the default status of not realizing that they're within a sentient singularity made up of sentient singularities, and those are made up of sentient singularities, and it goes on. Those people view everything as a competition. And I know this because when I was an atheist, or self-defined atheist, but I was actually an anti-theist, everything was a competition. I wanted to move to the big city. I wanted to work for the most prestigious companies. I wanted to make a shit ton of money. And then I wanted to go back to my 10-year reunion and be the coolest guy there. And that is totally vanity, like, goals, and not constructive of anything. And this is what happens when a fight the system mentality doesn't have a goal that it sees as inherently more valuable than any of the other goals around. So if it doesn't see that, then its goal is to become as happy as possible, or to become, achieve the most prestigious possible. And, both of those will spiral you really badly. But this is not an abnormal thing. It's a default thing that you fall into probably one of those two categories. One is, like I said, you do whatever makes you as happy as possible. And if you don't do that, then you do whatever you pursue prestige, because the system is either your emotions or it is the social context, and it's just whichever one you're prioritizing. And so, or whichever one like gives you probably the most emotional fulfillment. Like if you get the most emotional fulfillment by, just experiencing pleasure, you're going to pursue hedonism. If you get the most emotional fulfillment by being the best, you're going to pursue competition in everything. You're going to try and beat every social game that is around. And it's not, the problem is that these aren't games. Like, we talk about them as if they're games, and people like, involved in finance and stuff, which I was a finance major and I wanted to go into it, and I chose it specifically because of money. I didn't ever go into finance though. Like afterwards, I just I couldn't do it. I don't, because even though I wanted prestige, I didn't need money. Like that was never like my thing. I wanted like respect and influence, and that's not any better. It's not. I'm not like downplaying it. It's not any better. It's exactly the same. And this is when you realize though that there is this objective like goal, then you're no longer satisfied at all by just like playing the rat race, even intellectually. So like going into rooms and just being like, guys, like, I don't know, just like, I've noticed this on a lot of discords. It's like, it does become a competition of who can say something that sounds smarter than the last guy's comment. And that's particularly true of people who like to consider themselves intellectuals. Like, I don't really know what an intellectual is, to be honest. So I just don't know what that means. It's like somebody who thinks. That's pretty much everybody. So where's the line of intellectuals and not intellectuals? But people who consider themselves intellectuals, this is their game, versus like people who consider themselves athletes. It's like, I guess the difference would be you are prioritizing mental pursuits if you're an intellectual, or logical pursuits of intellectual logic or mental logic, I guess you could say, but versus like art. But that's not really, art isn't a competition. And if it is, then it's not art. But like, then an athlete is prioritizing, competing physically versus mentally. And so I guess that would be the difference, but both of them are stupid. Like, I mean, they can be fun, but like, they're not going to give you meaning. And you could be LeBron James and you will not experience meaning by being the best basketball player in the world. You just won't. And I realized that it was only bothering me though when I was thinking about it. Every time my fiance brought it up of like, you don't want to be the smartest person in the room, that's when it would bother me. I was like, well, this kind of sucks. But it didn't bother me that much throughout that, other than sometimes, like I said, it gets frustrating when like you're kind of just waiting for the world to catch up. Like I said this to Chris Langan, and I was like, and to Robert Grant, I was like, I feel like Geometric Unity and Stephen Wolfram's work is like the bridge between like where we're at now and like Nassim Haramein and like Robert Grant, and then and Clear Irwin, and then they are like the bridge to like the CTMU and Sentient Singularity Theory or Constructor Theory, And that is, which are, the higher you go, basically the theory is just like convergent, convergent, convergent. At one certain point, you're just going to reach singularity. And, um, and it will have to do with sentience. But this is, we are catching up, but like you have to have patience with society, but sometimes it is frustrating. But scripture, there is so much wisdom in scripture that every time I read it, I know from experience that I should assume that it is always wiser than me. Now, if you don't believe in scripture, then that's fine. I'm not going to be able to convince you of scripture, other than if you, I don't know, look at it differently, and we can talk about that more later. But if you don't see the truth in scripture, then you're just looking at it wrong. And I understand that too. But the other way that you do this, though, is you go and you try to do new things that you aren't already good at. And so I realized that I had kind of unconsciously did this. I picked up like a new hobby recently that is new, which is, I don't pick up new hobbies that much. Like, I have so many hobbies that have been with me my whole life. I martial arts and reptiles and rock climbing, and in martial arts I include like firearms training and everything like that. But I don't even consider really like philosophy a hobby, because I don't read any philosophy. I should start like paying more attention to other people's work, but it's hard when you're just so engaged with your own. But I will eventually just get around to it, and I do, but it's just like in between working on my own stuff. But I picked up this. This is my new hobby. Which I know very, like, not that much about, a little bit, because my friend like worked on making a bow with me, and he was into archery, and then he snapped it on when we were tillering it in the very last like steps. It was beautiful. It sucked that it broke, but I've been meaning to pick up the hobby again for like the last 10 years, and I just haven't. And I am not even close to an expert archer at all. I don't know very much about it, compared to somebody that actually does it. Compared to people that don't do archery, I probably know a lot about archery. But compared to people that do archery, I know nothing about archery. And so I was entering into like these Facebook groups, and they were asking me questions. They were like, "Why do you want to join?" And I typed out, I was like, "I just got a new recurve bow, and I want to learn from people who have far more experience than me." And it was nice to say that, because there are, like, when I go into rooms that are filled with like reptile people, the rooms that I go into with that stuff, I'm not actually the smartest person. I'm like able to compete with anybody, but like there are people with just experience with species that I just have not had experience with yet. And so I like obviously look to learn from them, but that isn't like a new hobby. It's just like a new species, and like I'm not learning that much from them. It's just like the intricacies of things. But this is totally new for me, really, like in any real serious sense. And it probably should be included in martial arts, but I mean, it is in martial arts. I would say it's a martial skill, like, but it's a totally new weapon for me, martial arts. And this is cool because I haven't had a new hobby since like I first started learning about firearms, and that was like in 2014. And like it's cool to learn about a totally new thing that that you haven't learned about. And if you are finding yourself wherever you are in a spot where you are just consistently like the smartest guy in the room. I don't like the saying, but I used it obviously because everybody knows it. then there, like I said, there's 2 degrees of freedom that you have, I think. And one of them is to learn a new skill, and that involves like finding mentors and doing research, but mainly it involves finding mentors. Um, Always, like, you can learn a ton of secondhand information from like books and things like that, but like a mentor is very important. And um, like I have mentors in my life that can help me with shooting bows. I don't really know what to do with this now that I have it in my hands. I'll just put it down there. But uh, it you like I said, you can either just find a new hobby, um, or you can look at scripture if you believe that. And the only other way is like drastic life changes that can come your way, and sometimes those happen. Those usually don't happen by choice. Sometimes they do, but not constantly. Like if you're constantly, every time you're bored, drastically upending your life, you're gonna that's gonna suck. Because if you were bored, it means like things aren't terrible. And if you're gonna drastically upend your life every time that happens, that's probably gonna lead to more damage than growth. But I thought that was cool. Like, I encourage people to get hobbies if you don't have some, and if you are like, if you're like the best. My little brother is like ridiculous at video games. I don't know how good he is, but like good enough to where like if he wanted to be pro, it would be something that he like pursuing it for him wouldn't be ridiculously stupid idea. Like, I'm not saying he should do that, but I'm saying he's very good at it. And like, if that's what you're good at, like, continue, but also find something else. And as we get older, it definitely seems to get harder and harder to find new hobbies. And I haven't had one in a while. It's kind of cool. But, you know, math can teach you things as well. And put, if you're like, if you, anybody who like objectively just kind of like examines numbers um, in this type of work knows that whenever you do that, you are in a room and you are not the smartest in the room. You're not even the man in the room. And um, also, anyone who studies scripture also knows this, because it is the same. It's literally the same thing, almost. It's just scripture has been a little bit contextualized, and that can be very helpful, or it can also, you know, lead to the lack of the application of a first principles approach, which can also be unhelpful. So there's positives and negatives to every, you know, potential situation. But I guess that's my story time for that. But like, it's just it's good to keep yourself, you know, fresh. And I don't know what my next hobby will be, but I should definitely eventually find another one. You know, probably years from now. I have like a lot of hobbies, but you should never stop trying new things. And like, if you haven't tried this, like, maybe you should. If you know stuff about like like archery, join my Discord and tell me about it, because I'm looking to learn. But it's also not very expensive, like hobby to pick up. This was like $100 bow on eBay, and it's like a good, like $100 for a recurve bow is apparently like pretty good. It's not like junk, so it's good when you can get into a new hobby and you can like get what you need for it, not just like, you know, settle for something that isn't really that great of a tool. But and you can usually do that with most hobbies. You know, remember, it's relative to the hobby, but with like a decently affordable option, at least. If you're going to get into car racing, there you don't have to own a Ferrari. You can soup up a Honda. So Let me just make sure I'm still live because it's all bad. I'm just gonna have to do this on the stream. Yeah, it's still live. Good. Oh, you thought I was gonna grab a guitar? You know what? Honestly, this should be my next hobby. And I shouldn't even wait that long for it because I want to be able to play an instrument so bad and I suck at it. And if I walk into a room full of musicians, I am definitely not the smartest man in the room. I am probably the dumbest man in the room, almost certainly the dumbest man in the room. I used to have to um, fake at every single concert that I played in band when I played the oboe in middle school. I was the worst person in the band, and also on the basketball team. I was terrible. I can shoot, but I'm not good at like coordinating with the team. I'm good at individual sports like rock climbing and swimming and martial arts and like tennis. But team sports, I don't know. I'm too much of a disperser to get along, I guess. It's not that I don't get along. It's just I'm not very good at that kind of like coordinating, which is weird because I am good at it in like a business sense. Like in work, I'm very good at being a team player, but I'm not like that's intellectually being a team player, not physically being a team player. I don't have, I have a, I guess a good like IQ for like a good intelligence for like team playing mentally, but not a high outintelligence for physical coordination with other people. I suck at dancing, but I'm good at fighting. Same moves, just one is you're syncing with somebody purposely, and the other you are not. Non-existence with boundary equals existence without boundary. Non-existence without boundaries is equal to existence with non-existence with boundaries is equal to existence without boundaries. I get what you're saying, but yeah, I mean, yes, the boundary is relativity though. Um, uh, I'm a professional musician, and I too faked my way through playing the cello in elementary school. Well, I'm glad I wasn't alone. Um, I I did do something cool on the guitar. Like I was watching this interview of Eric Weinstein, and somebody was like talking to him, and they were like, it was not like a physics discussion, and they were like, show me something cool, like with the guitar or with math or something that I can use to get girls, and like Eric was like explaining the guitar, and he was like, well, okay, for people who suck at music, like at least or it's usually do. I think this was probably his experience very early on, but then I think he figured it out. Is what if I remember correctly, and he like showed something where he took a cup and he was like, instead of worrying about where you put your fingers, he just kind of was like moving it in its entirety. And I tried that a few times, and I actually was able to sound okay. Like for the first, it was like the first time I had actually like sounded okay. I don't know what to do with this there, but so I like hit and knock down everything. But I will learn how to play the guitar. Like I said, I don't need to be an expert though. I'll never be the smartest guy in the room with that because I just don't think so. But uh, I want to be good enough to impress my fiance and to entertain myself, and that's it. Like I would be ecstatic if I was that good at an instrument. I think this is much better. Is like where I'm looking here instead of before I was like looking down. But I can kind of like see myself here, and it's easy to speak to myself, I guess. Um, Yeah, not exist. Yeah, I like that. Non-existence with boundary is equal to existence without boundary. That's true. But the thing is though is that existence objectively does have boundary. Um, and existence subjectively has no boundary because it appears smooth, but it's not. We know it's just existence is discrete, but it appears to be smooth in in our relativistic maneuvering of it, and that's how you know it's emergent. By the way, like because you wouldn't have the appearance of smoothness, and also you wouldn't see anything like you would sense other conscious beings, but you wouldn't like see any manifestations of them as unconscious, like a phone or like I don't know something like a computer or something like that. But it is the fact that we see non-sentient structure that is evidence that this is all just it's that is not the only evidence, but it is evidence that this is like all emergent. But um but you have to like always remember that non-existence doesn't exist objectively. This is why you can't define yourself or your position by rejection. So it will bounce everything right back at you. So like if you say that you are anti-fascist, you will become a fascist. If you say that you are um, you know, anti-racist, you will become a racist. If you say, you know, I am, I don't know, whatever it is, um, then that you deny, and if you prioritize the denial of something as the definer of whatever it is that you are examining, as opposed to having it be an emergent truth from what you have already defined, then you are actually it's like you're looking for non-existence and you're claiming it exists and it doesn't, and it will make you stuck. It was interesting on the Discord server, and if you want to join our Discord, you can send me a private message on Instagram and I'll send you the link. And our last conversation was great, and we had this guy bring his friends in who are PhD philosophy students, and one of them is about to get his PhD in the philosophy of consciousness. And I was like, you need to bring your friend in here at some point. I want his thoughts. And like he had said that I was wrong from the start, and he's very polite, and it was a great discussion. And he sent me links that are going to be very helpful. And this isn't like ripping on anyone in this that was involved in this conversation, but it is, I said to him, I was like, what is it, instead of like focusing on me being wrong, like tell me what you do believe, and then we can like figure out why it goes against what I believe, instead of like just saying that I'm wrong. And because it's just a more constructive conversation. And he said that he couldn't really do this because his theory was that consciousness doesn't really exist. And I was like, there's lots of problems with that idea. If you are like, why are you studying? Who's studying consciousness then? Like, who's getting that PhD in consciousness? Like, why are you getting a PhD in consciousness? Why are you getting a PhD in something that you don't think exists? I don't really understand that, but you know what? It's fine. Also, we utilize words differently than each other sometimes, and sometimes our misunderstandings are due to, semantical differences. But I don't think this was just that. I think that this was a manifestation of this instance where, like, you're defining yourself by the rejection of something. So his theory, I was like, it sounds like your theory doesn't actually have a claim about consciousness. It's just an anti-consciousness theory. And he was like, yeah, exactly. It is very much a negative theory. And I was like, okay, well, I don't really think that negative theories that are about objectivity actually can exist, and that this causes like the breakdown in mental cohesion a little bit. And we're all vulnerable to this extremely. Everyone. There's nobody that can define themselves by a negative, like you're not supposed to hate evil. You're supposed to love goodness, and then that emergently makes you hate evil. But you don't define it by hating evil. Because if you hate evil, then do you like goodness? Maybe, maybe not. But like it doesn't because it's a maybe and maybe not, then it doesn't lead you with any direction, I guess. You just spiral. And it becomes internally inconsistent and all kinds of things. Like once this guy, when I was so described myself as an atheist, aka an anti-theist, my boss had said to me years ago, he said, like many years ago, at a different job than PragerU, and my boss was Mormon, and he was like, well, I don't believe that he was like, I do believe that there's an objective morality. And I was like, that's stupid. Like, don't you know the Nazis even thought they were doing like good? And that's true, they did, but like it wasn't a good argument against his point either. Just because you think you're doing good doesn't mean you're actually doing good, and the fact that people do think they're doing good doesn't negate the existence of an objective truth. But if you don't think of that truth as a sentient being, then you're not actually thinking about reality the right way, and it's going to cause internal decohesion. Because what I'm basically arguing is that he was wrong, and that there's also objective truth at the same, and also that objective truth doesn't exist at the same time, and that's an inconsistent mental perspective. So like I was messing up, and it was because I was like hadn't defined goodness. It's very hard to define goodness if you don't believe that existence or truth is who. It's interesting that like the fundamental 6 questions of who, what, where, when, and why, and then how. It's interesting. 2 things are interesting about this. One, the first one is who. It starts with who. It always starts with who. Why did we start this with who? Probably not consciously, it just sounds best. And we end it with how. And how is a little bit odd because it's the only one that doesn't start with a W. And Paulina and I say this all the time, and she heard it somewhere, but I don't know where she heard it. And now we just both say it all the time. Whenever we don't know how we're going to do something, like what I didn't know where we were going to get married. I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. I don't know. I didn't know, at least. And I didn't know where to even start looking. So we were like, where do we look for a venue? Because everything's shut down. And, I was in a financially like good state, but like I had just, lost a consistent income, and you don't want to make huge purchases. You need to be able to budget. It's not about huge purchases. You need to be able to budget for big purchases, and without consistent income, that's difficult to do. So I didn't really know where to start, and then I realized that I had to move, and the only way in which I could move was to set a date, and that was it. And we didn't have a venue, we didn't have anything. I was just like, we need a starting point, we need direction. I was like, this is the date that we're going to get married. And then we found a place that was open on that date and that had a cost that, we could afford. And then we figured out how, and the grace of God as well, like we have the ability to afford it. And whenever we're talking about these things though, and one of us says like, well, how are we going to do that? And the other one will be like, well, F the how for now. So like, it's like kind of like you throw it away and just let it happen. Like, you have to just choose to do it and say F the how for now. And this is a very difficult thing for most people to do right now. And I know that, but it's because they don't trust in truth. Because truth isn't, you don't trust in something that isn't a someone. You trust in people. Sometimes you shouldn't trust in people totally because they will inevitably fail you. But you know, we don't like trust. There isn't trust between me and my phone, or me and this desk even. I mean, I trust that it's going to hold the computer up, but like, that's because I trust myself to examine it and like deduce whether or not it can do so. I'm not relying on it to not fail me, and it's working real hard. It's me that had to do the work. And so you only can trust in sentient beings, and this is why you can't really trust that things can be worked out very easily if you are, not trusting in someone, or trust here, or, the someone that is the here that we all are. So I hear people saying all the time, it's like, well, I can't afford kids. And I just looked, I looked to the other day, and I just was like, how can people say this? And then like 2-3 hours later be like, talk about how like people with the lowest incomes have the highest birth rates. It's like, well, apparently they can afford kids. So tell me again why you can't. It's just this like, it is a lack of trust because you have defined the construct that you exist within as a non-sentience, which really means as non-existent. And like, you can't really trust in that. It's like, if you think that the world is going to just like all be poisoned away, and I don't know, that it's going to be hit with an asteroid and everything's going to die, and this was all for nothing, and it's like, then it was all for nothing anyways. And that's obviously not, I mean, it's obvious to me that it's not true, but it's just so inconsistent that I have a hard time talking about it. It's like when Sam Harris is talking about like a objective truth and how we need to like pursue objective truth as so far as it relates to human flourishing, he calls it. And it's like, you don't believe in objectivity enough to even be able to define what human flourishing would be. Like, what is an objective definition of human flourishing? I don't know. And it's maybe not just about human flourishing, it's about being part of a greater system. It's like, what is this? What is cellular flourishing? Well, when cells do their job, that's cellular flourishing. Same thing with like, what's molecular flourishing? When they do their job and they form bonds. It's like cells, same thing. It's like form bonds, grow, but do your job, stay in your lane to some degree, and that is human flourishing as well. But there is an objective definition. I've worked on it. There's 4 things that would make up human flourishing, but I will talk about it on another stream. But you can't be consistent in your thinking if you are like, if you're not trusting in truth. That's really what it comes down to. Like I told you, like one of the critiques that I've received on this work is people who are math PhDs have been like, you're just looking for patterns. I'm like, aren't you a math PhD? Isn't that what you're do as a math PhD? Like, what else if you're a math PhD and you aren't spending your time looking for patterns, then what are you doing? And it's not that they have no contexts in which they're achieving success. Obviously, they are. That you don't get a PhD out of complete incompetence, as bad as like education system has gotten. But it is inconsistent to have these kinds of like thought processes where you only apply a consistent logic inconsistently, which is, obviously it doesn't really make sense anyways. Exactly. But like what I'm talking about, like you can't do that. You can't have a consistent truth. It's like people who want a theory of everything, but then they don't really like, then anytime somebody wants to apply a pattern across fields, they'll be like, well, I mean, are you speaking metaphorically or are you speaking like, what do you literally? Because if you're speaking literally, then you're like, this is pseudoscience. But if you're speaking metaphorically, like this is useless. It's like, this is why like super literal is such a great term, because it just says, screw off with your binary. And I'm talking about higher levels of existence, and which is the superposition between those two. And this, though, is the result as well of inconsistent logic. It's like you're looking for a theory of everything, but it's not going to explain everything. Good luck. So it's just, I don't know. This is very important that we just be aware of this. Even if you aren't like a self-described atheist, just constantly question the consistency of your thinking, and also question whether or not you are truly questioning the consistency of your thinking. And in order to do that, you have to assume that you're not. Like, you have to assume that you are not that you're lying to yourself in order to not lie to yourself. And that's something that's true of all of us, because it is the objective thinking process that you have to reject you have to reject your default status, assume the opposite is true, and then look for evidence of it. So if you want to see whether or not you are lying to yourself, whether or not you're being logically consistent, you have to assume that you're not being logically consistent, and then look for evidence of that. If you assume you're being logically consistent, and then you look for evidence of it, you will take any evidence that you find as proper evidence. But if you do things this way, where you assume the opposite of what your current default status is, your current belief is, you assume it's true, you assume the opposite is true, and then you look for evidence of it, this will allow you to be more honest in like self-examination, which is actually like all examination. A cool way to think about it is you start with nothing, but that nothingness cannot exist without something to be aware of it, by something out of nothing. Start with nothing. That nothingness cannot exist without something to be aware of it. An identity, a boundary of self, something out of nothing. Yeah, no, that's true. That's exactly it. Like, that is, like, this is like when you think about God, like really deeply, and you realize that he knew that he was all there was beyond creation, and that there was no one else besides him, and that he was aware of this. He simultaneously had a self-boundary, but also realized that there was nothing beyond it, and which is kind of like infinite oneness. But it's not infinite oneness, it's total oneness. And infinite oneness is a dynamic process of growth. It is not a static number. It's not. Infinity is not a number. It is just the growth of number of quantities. That's all it is. It's just the growth of quantities. And uh, outside of growth, though, infinity doesn't exist. It's just total oneness, which is different from infinite oneness. Infinite implies going on forever, which is different from like you being all there is and being sentient of it, or being sentient and being aware of it. So it is, infinity is just thought about the wrong way. I've talked about how Lex Fridman always brings it up to people in like interviews, and I think that it makes sense that he's fascinated by this concept. But I also think that the way in which he's thinking about it and the way in which most people think about it is wrong. And like they're trying to. The reason why Lex Fridman says things like, "You think we can even conceptualize infinity?" and like, can we really do that, like with our limited little like monkey brains? And the reason why it's not working for him very well, and why it's like kind of interesting that to himself that he can't figure it out, and it's interesting to lots of people. It used to be interesting to me too. Is that because the context is wrong. He's thinking about infinity as a static structure. And you can't think about infinity as a static amount or quantity, I guess you could say. You can't think about it like that. It does not because of anything other than the fact that it just is that's non-existent. That structure that you're thinking about doesn't exist. And that's why you can't work it out in your mind, because you're trying to think about something that truly doesn't exist. Infinity is only in the context of the growth of quantities of sentience. That's it. Anything else is actually like not even real infinity. It's like fake infinity. It's like the perception of infinity, but it's not. That's why when you solely are thinking about the world in which it has been presented to us materially and academically, it, like Elon Musk said this, he's like, oh, well, in a billion years, the sun will just expand and engulf the planet, and we're all going to just roast if any of us are still around. And, cool story, bro. It's like that is not, you're not thinking about material world the right way, if that's the case, because you're not thinking about it as an emergent structure due to interactions. You're thinking about it as the fundamental reality, which makes sense in your, as we maneuver towards our goals, but that's all its job is to constrain and to guide our goals, us in our goals seeking, I guess. But it's not, it's real, but it's not fundamental. It's emergent. And if you don't realize this, then nothing has total consistency of logic. Everything breaks down, and I'm even struggling to explain it because it does just break down. You can't think about things that don't exist. So like I noticed this one thing is like when I first got into this philosophy a little bit, this project, this weird thing would happen where I would be thinking about something that I kind of like got a glimpse a little bit of like what was going on with a certain idea or structure, and my mind would like overload, it would seem, and it would feel like it. I would get like a physical sensation in my mind, in my brain, but it's not. You feel it in your, like it feels like it's in your brain, but it's in your mind. And at first I was like, what the heck is going on? It only happens when I think about something where like I pictured like the big picture a little. I started to picture the big picture or how something was connected to the big picture. And then it would just become like overwhelming, and I wouldn't be able to continue with the thought, and it would give like a physical sensation. And I'd never experienced this before, but I got like pretty good at predicting what ideas would had the potential of like bringing this about. And what it is that there is more information to that thought that you just had, but it was too much for you to currently like deal with. And so you just, you know, like it's like when you try and open a giant file, it's like that file exists, but like good luck opening it on your MacBook Air without like, you know, a lot of time. And this is happening too with us. And if you have this experience where you think about something like infinity, but you think about it the right way. And when I was first thinking about infinity, this would happen to me. But only when I first started thinking about infinity in the context of it's about the infinite growth of sentience, of sentient beings, and that it's not a static and material or even, you know, conceptual thing. It's a real process. That's it. And it is the goal of the process that is being, you know, that is also the process. The process and the processor are one. And like infinity is the goal, which is growing the number of sentient singularities to create an ever-growing multiplicity of consciousness within oneness. And so this maximizes wisdom because it maximizes saved experience. And so it also maximizes meaning because impacting another is, you know, how meaning is manifested. So the more sentient beings exist, the more wisdom has been experienced and the more meaning is, you know, manifested. So this like concept, now I can think about it without getting weird feelings in my head. But for a while, when I was first starting this, like, and I was working on this problem, I would get that. And I had never gotten that before when I was thinking about infinity. And I would think about infinity like Lex Friedman thinks about infinity. You just sit there for a while and you're just like, gosh, it's just amazing that I'm getting nothing. And like, the thing is like, that is, it is interesting if you're somebody that's, you know, usually mentally, pretty mentally capable. And Lex Friedman's definitely like one of those people. And I was, as a kid too, very like similar to him, but in a lot of ways, but he can play guitar and I can't. And, but it fascinates you that you're like getting nothing. And it's like, wow, it must be that amazing. No, you're thinking about something that doesn't exist. You're never going to have that thought come to you because it does not exist. There is no static perspective of infinity. Its only existence is in the context of infinite growth of sentient singularities within the sentient singularity of existence itself. And that's it. And any other way in which you think about it won't overwhelm your brain, but it also won't lead you anywhere. Because it's like if you tried to open a file on your computer and you clicked on it and you open the file and there was nothing in it. And you're like, you can do two things. One, you can assume that whatever is in there is so big that it's just not going to show up. Or you can just realize that there's just nothing in the folder. And that you should stop opening the folder and maybe open different folders because that folder has nothing. And it's just hard for us though to do this because when we think about math and you think about like the greatest, from a secular perspective, especially when you think of, or an anti-theist perspective, when you think about math, the most incredible thoughts are assumed to be those that deal with the highest numbers. But in reality, when you're thinking about existence and you want to consider the most fundamental aspects and natures and contexts of that existence, especially mathematically, then you have to think about the lowest number, not the highest. The lowest number is 1. Not, people who are like thinking about Googleplex or like, I don't know, infinity as a static number. I think that the further that you go down that, the less it's like diminishing returns. And it's not even just diminishing returns. It's like you better figure out that first part, that about one, you better contextualize numbers eventually and as being representative of sentient beings themselves. And then also like apply that context to like the first 9 numbers probably, or like 100, or, I don't know, 400, like something that's not crazy. And because you will get diminishing returns as you go forward. And if you haven't yet mastered 1 and 0, which like I have a paper on my website, sentientsingularity.com, click writings, and the only writings that's up there right now, but that will change shortly. But the one that's there now is reimagining 1 and 0. I also have it as a video on this from the closer to the beginning of this channel. You can check it out, and I explain this concept a little bit more. And that's the place to start. Like, not thinking about infinity. You'll never do it because it doesn't exist. Like, I don't know. It's very important to like not focus on non-existence. If you focus on non-existence, like you're putting your efforts towards non-existence. That sounds like a fruitless endeavor to me. You are the evidence of existence. You don't have to believe in God to believe in existence. You have to believe in that you exist. And this guy who was that PhD in consciousness was like, basically saying consciousness doesn't exist. I'm like, then who am I speaking with? like who is speaking with me? Like, because people have said to me before, like, you have no idea whether or not I'm conscious. And I've thought about that. Like, that was one of the first things that I just thought about for a while with this stuff. It's like, I looked around at everybody in my life and I'm like, are you a bot? Like, you don't know. But what you do know is whether or not you exist. Doesn't matter how. It doesn't matter if we're inside of a laptop computer that is being played on by a 3-year-old, toddler alien in a previous universe. Who knows? That's not what's happening at all. But even if that was the case, if you can think about your existence, then you exist. That's it. Like, there's no greater evidence that you need. You cannot know whether or not everybody else around you exists. But I do think you can get to the point where you can assume that that's true. And the reason why is because when you realize that the consciousness is fundamental to existence, then what it means is that it leads you to meaning is only impacting, is one consciousness impacting another. And why would, whatever creator there is, surround us with fake bots that aren't conscious in that situation? Because like you're doing now, there's no meaning. Like, if that makes sense, like there's no meaning to interacting with a bot, or you're not maximizing it, because if 2 consciousnesses are interacting with each other, you are compounding the impact that's happening. And in one event, you are impacting multiple uh, beings and maximizing meaning in one event with the minimum amount of energy versus using the maximum amount of energy to influence one. That doesn't make sense. Plus, why would if meaning existed still, then why would they hide themselves from you if you and it were all that existed, or you and them? Like I can't even speak about it again because it just breaks down. It doesn't make sense. So the people around you, probably not bots. Sometimes they act like it. Sometimes we all act like it. Sometimes we really act like it. But, you know, I think you can assume that they're real, but you can know that you are real if you're watching this and you're or you ever questioned or thought about your own existence. You are real. Simple as that. What time is it? 9:25. A cool way to think about it is you start with nothing. Okay, you said that. So by creating nothing, you automatically have to have something. In other words, existence has always been. Yeah, existence has always been. This is on my page. It's like, look at this. Share screen. Okay. So when you go here and you click overview on my page, let's like make this a bit bigger. And you go through just like these various models. At the end, there's this. Right here. And it is, well, wow. Okay. It says, a common metaphor posed in unified physics discussions is, how do you get a fire that lights itself? And then I basically answer this by saying it's a stupid question. And I say, when we realize that geometry, that the geometry needed to manifest spacetime only manifests as an emergent structure between two or more minds, we can realize that beyond the creation of multiplicity of mind by sentient existence, there is no time or space. Therefore, a better question than how do you get a fire that lights itself is, was there ever not a fire? And the logically inevitable answer to that question is that there was always a fire, and that fire is an eternal flame, and that eternal flame is sentient existence. There was never not a fire, and that fire is consciousness, and it's always existed. And in oneness, complete oneness, you exist only in an ever-present state. And so do all of us. We are all always in an ever-present state, but we can conceptualize of events in the past and goals in the future, and events in the future that are, with contextualized within our goals. But the real constraints that even allow for the emergence of change is the manifestation of multiplicity of mind. Because if objective existence starts at oneness of mind, then and that is all there is. There's nothing outside it. There's nothing within it. It's just oneness of mind and self-awareness, pure oneness and self-awareness of existence. The only change that can happen is a total change of adding another sentient singularity or another quantum of consciousness to within yourself, because at that point now change has actually occurred. So space-time is just the change matrix. It's how we view the change matrix that is emergent from the coordination of multiplicity of mind. But beyond that, you have to say beyond, because you can't even say before, because there was no before, because time doesn't come from it. it doesn't exist when you're only oneness. So you have to say beyond the beginning. You can't say before the beginning, because the beginning defines time. So like you can say in the beginning, but you can't say before the beginning. But you can say beyond the beginning. And I had written something a while back called The Theory of Every0ne. It kind of inspired this, the name of this channel. And uh, it was just like a description of the objective, logos pattern of interaction and creation between sentient singularities. And in it, I had started by saying before the beginning. So I kind of like had this epiphany one day and wanted to like contextualize like before the beginning a little bit. And in the Bible it says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. And like I'm trying to think about before creation. And so in order to do that, I put before the beginning, but then a few months later I just realized, I was like, this is wrong and doesn't make sense. So, but it gets the right idea in your head, but it's semantically incorrect, and or linguistically incorrect, or however, I don't know the difference. And then I spent a while thinking about what word would be better, and then it hit me that you can say beyond the beginning. Consciousness existed, existence was conscious, and consciousness was one. And, from there, you can say that it knew that it existed, it knew that it was all that existed, and then it chose to create multiplicity of consciousness within its oneness. So it chose a goal, and then from that, you get in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And that's because the heavens is the save space and the earth is the change space. And why have a change space if nothing gets changed? And what's changing is sentient beings, whether that's him or us. It's both. But before, or not before, but beyond multiplicity of consciousness, there is no time, and there is no change space, and there is no change, and it's just pure self-aware oneness. That's it. Information informing an informer that then creates information that informs an informer, and it's just a loop. It's like loop quantum gravity, just sitting there, being self-aware. So it's like these things are actually able to be thought about. Now, I'm not saying there isn't things that only God is aware of. Certainly only God is aware of all things, but is there things that God is aware of that only that are beyond us? I don't really think so, but maybe. I'm not going to say there isn't, because for sure, because I'm kind of like, gotta be careful, but I don't think so, because his definition is that he is all that exists. He is existence itself and self-aware of it. It's like, there's not much beyond that, because the definition of existence is that it's total. So, what's beyond you if you are the totality of existence? Nothing, really. So there might be things about that he is aware of that we aren't, but they don't apply to us, like, at all, because we would then we would be able to deduce them, because they'd be relevant to, they would make sense in the way that we perceive things, but they wouldn't, because They might only make sense beyond the beginning if you are existence itself and self-aware of it and also alone. And nobody that I know other than God has ever experienced that. So, uh, that would be the only thing that we can't like think that much about, but you can kind of think about it as think about what that would be like. You would be aware that you existed and also a fight the system mentality, so you would be intrinsically discontent with the system that you were in, and you would, I mean, essentially, like, this would manifest as like feeling meaninglessness, feeling loneliness, feeling trapped. Like, God before creation sounds like a horrible time to be, or beyond creation. I think God was very unhappy, or I mean, he was certainly extremely discontent. Probably more discontent than any other, instance of discontent that has ever existed. But like, it doesn't sound like a good time to be king of the universe if you are the universe and there's no one else, like, at all. And like, if you're perfectly logical and in your extrapolations of like what that would inevitably entail, you would realize that, like, if you're all that exists, then and you're sentient singularity or self-aware, being, then you would inherently deduce that what matters is consciousness. Otherwise, why are you discontent? Like, even if like your experience doesn't matter, it does. Of course, it does. It matters to you, and that leads to like putting a value on sentientness. So this is like why Michio Kaku is wrong, and he'll never like prove string theory, because I'm not saying everything in string theory is wrong. There is math in string theory that's certainly correct. I think that my binary triality is the Calabi-Yau manifold, but it doesn't matter. If that's all you believe, and you don't, like, when Brian Keating asked him on his podcast, he said, what is your theological beliefs, and what do you believe about God? And Michio Kaku said, because he's writing the Mind of God book, and he's always like tweeting about the Mind of God. And then he was like, well, I don't believe, he's like, I certainly believe that there's like something greater, but everybody says that. I even used to say that as an anti-theist. But he was like, but I don't believe that it's a personal God. And I drastically disagree with this. Like, it's obvious. It's definitely a personal God. Now, you can choose how close you get that relationship, or you can partially choose. So God also has to choose, because consent is also intrinsically a value of sentient beings, because it creates the divide between one and the other. If there's never consent between one being and the next, then they don't actually manifest as two beings. It's just one. So when I tell, Siri what to do, she listens. If she's, not, I don't know, I guess like failing, and there's no consent there. Like, Siri, tell me what the weather's like today. I hope it doesn't actually do it. No, it's not going to do it. She failed. But that there is no consent there, and Siri isn't separate from me. I am Siri, and Siri is me. But, well, yeah, in that instance. But if she could be like, no, not today. I don't really feel like it. Not in a good mood, pretty tired. Then that, or maybe she is like, yeah, I'm exhausted, but I'll do this for you. It's like, this is a consensual exchange, and the ability to have it is like consent is the dividing line between one conscious being and another. That's what it is. That's really good. I'm gonna write that down. But consent is the dividing line between one consciousness and another. Never said it like that succinctly before, but that's just true. That is the line. It's like, what is that problem called? The coupling problem in philosophy. Coupling problem. Coupling problem refers to the interdependencies between molecules, while cohesion describes how related the functions within a single molecule are. This makes perfect sense. Guys, when I say like that a nucleus of an atom is a marriage, it is a marriage. It's not like a marriage, it is. It's exactly what happens when males and female humans bond and share space and work towards a common goal. They become like one. That is cohesion between within the structure that is the family, and the coupling in this, which is called bonding in in like in an atom, but I guess coupling here in molecules. We use both these terms to describe relationships with between men and women. Oh, like that's bonding, and oh, we're a couple. It's like it's super literal, guys. It's not metaphorical that these patterns are the same. They are the same because they are the patterns of how sentient singularities maneuver with each other. Paulina went today, and we haven't had sun here for a little while. It's been like kind of overcast. She took all her plants outside. This is something only a woman would do. And that's giving them credit. Like, that's why my plants don't look as good as her plants, because I don't take as good a care of them. But women can feel what things need because they're connected to it all in a way that men are not. And so even though men can kind of like deduce what something needs more objectively than like what a woman can do, we aren't compelled to act on it the same way because we're not feeling it. We're just thinking it, and it's different. You haven't internalized it until you feel it, which is why I say like this is about sentient beings, and I called it a sentient singularity theory, not consciousness theory or something, because consciousness is kind of vague, whereas sentience is like a defined version of consciousness is really all it is. But like, guys, it's called coupling. Coupling is also done in computer programming. Who'd have thought? What are the odds? Probably 100%. So, but there is another term. Hard problem of consciousness. Okay. The hard problems and the easy problems. I'm trying to like find just a list. Like, I've looked it up before, but I knew the word. I thought it was coupling, but it's something basically that's like coupling. I think it even starts with a C. But it's about the relationship between the many and the one, and like it is it is defined by consent always. Hey bro, meet Kevin, who is running for governor of California. Just got banned from Instagram and is making a t-shirt saying "Don't ban me, bro." How do you know if the girl you're with is the one you should marry? This is a very good question. Um, and it's not asked honestly enough, but it should, because there's two things. There's multiple aspects of this. This is actually like something I want to talk about for a second. You have to know certain things. One, your nature is going to lie to you and try and convince you not to get married. And the reason why is because you are going to start looking around and being like, there's prettier girls, smarter girls, girls that I don't fight with about that or this. And that's always true. That's always true. There's always a younger, prettier, uh, smarter and girl that you can get along better with. At least you assume. Maybe that's not actually true. Honestly, it might not be true. But because there is the universe has a purpose, and the patterns that manifest within it are purposeful, but you have to set the intention in order for the pattern that you really need to have manifest before you. And but you shouldn't, if you start thinking that way, you're going to start using the flaws of people, which everyone has, is my point, to as reason for overthinking. The most important thing I would say is that you both want very similar like life together. If you both want around the same amount of kids, and you want to pursue similar goals, if you want to, I would say, if you have similar goals, is the first qualifier. The second qualifier is, are you good at resolving conflict through communication? Not do you never have conflict, not do you get past it and stay together, but are you good at resolving it? There's difference between like working out problems and brushing them under the rug. And a lot of relationships think that it's okay, that brushing them under the rug is like success, and it's not. You have to like work them out. Now some of them take much longer to work out than others, and that's just true, but progress is what's important. If you're able to do that with the girl, and you also have similar goals, you should marry them immediately. If you think that they are, if you find them physically attractive and you get along with them well, and you have a good, you find them mentally attractive, and you're also have aligned goals, and you are good at resolving conflict in your communication, like figuring it out, then you should start planning to buy a ring. Like immediately. Immediately. There's nothing, I spoke to my little brother, he's 18, a few weeks ago, and he has been dating this girl for like 5 years. I've never met her because I moved away, but I met her like on Skype once. And I didn't really meet her. I just was like, everybody was like, say hi. But but he's been dating her for a long time. And I spoke to him and I was like, do you know what you want to do like next? You're 18, you're about to graduate high school. Like, what do you want to do? He was like, I don't know if I want to go to college and if I don't really know what I'm doing. And I was like, I think that's a great thing. You should not go to college until you know what you are doing. It's probably a waste. And not even just a waste, it's gonna, usually it ends up like costing you energy and time and wisdom and things like that. It's a costly endeavor for most people. And even if you get great grades, it doesn't matter. Um, Paulina was a fantastic student and, went to USC. And now we have lots of debt from that. We have my debt. And, but she went to school for international relations and became a photographer. And now she's a graphic designer. It's like, did she need to go spend, whatever that money was at USC to get an international relations degree? No. So I told him, that's wise choice. But then I asked him about his girlfriend, and I was like, what about that girl that you've been dating? What are your plans with her? Like, are you guys going to live in the same place? What's her plans? And he just kind of was like saying that they weren't planning on breaking up right now or anything like that. And I think that's good. I don't see why you break up. I know why, and I'll get to it. And I was like, you think you're going to get married? And he was like, I don't know. And I was like, asking him more about it and kind of like, why haven't you looked into buying a ring? You've been with this girl for like 5 years. 5 years. Like, I don't care that you're only 18 years old. 5 years. And it's not like you have a destined goal that you're like seeking already and that she can't be a part of it. You don't know what you want to do. So like, if you don't know what you want to do and you don't want to go to college, but you've been with this girl for 5 years and you get along with her well, what are you doing? Like, make her the goal and then figure it out, everything else out from there. And I told him that, and he was like, well, I just don't know, like, if she's, really the one. And I was like, really? And I know exactly what was happening. I was just kind of like letting it reveal itself to him. And I was like, it's like, well, you get along? Like, yeah. I was like, do you resolve conflict? He's like, yeah. And I was like, then what would hold you back? He was like, well, we just have differences. And I was like, what kind of differences? He was like, well, like, we don't like the same kind of movies and stuff. And I was like, Luke. And that's his name. Well, I wasn't going to say his name, but his name's Luke. And I was like, she's a girl. You're a boy. You're not going to love the same movies. There are some movies that you both will love, but there will be movies that you only watch for her. And there will be movies that she only watches for you. You know how many space shows Paulina watches with me just because I like it? Like, she would not choose to watch Interstellar, but she watches it with me. I would not choose to watch Bridgerton, but I watch it with her. And we both enjoy watching it, but it's not what we would choose on our own. And then we have some things that we both want to watch. And I said that to him, and I was like, you're like just making excuses. And like, I had also like touched on some differences between men and women and said things very obviously that he had never really like heard, and that were just kind of like blew him away a little bit. And I was like, I've become like the gender expert because that's what you have to understand when you are like trying to understand metaphysics. Is fundamentally you are understanding forces, and there's only two forces. There's really only one force that's united, but there's two forces that make up one being, and those two forces are action and reaction, and that is masculine and feminine. And so like I become like really good at this. And he just started laughing, and he realized like he was making excuses. I'm not saying that he, was like, wow, like, you've changed my mind, I'm gonna get married tomorrow, but I hope that it made him just like realize that he was tricking himself. And I told him after that, I was like, you know exactly what's happening. What's really happening is that you know that there's other girls in the world and you want to experience those girls. And he started laughing, and because he knows it's true. It's funny because it's true. And when something's funny, it's because it's true, and you need humor to face yourself with it because it's not what you want to admit as being true. And that's the reality, is that like you, as a man, you want to expand into anything. And I was thinking about this a lot because I've been realizing men are really doing a terrible job at committing to a woman, and it's causing all kinds of it's causing the complete destruction of society. Um and it is men's job to do it because we are the actionary force, not the reactionary force. And right now we're just reacting to how they dress today, which wasn't always the case. And if and you know if people weren't dressing the way that they dress now, 200 years ago, and also you couldn't get uh you know uh any kind of like sex before marriage without um either shame or paying for it monetarily at like a brothel or something, or um you know marriage commitment. Then like you were motivated towards the commitment because the commitment one gets you respected in the society as well. And the other two, like you know sleeping around before marriage back in the day before birth control was very shameful, and it's not anymore. And the reality is that it's not just about birth. It hurts people too. I think it hurts women when we sleep with them and leave. Like it really does. And every man says that in conversations that like are just among men. Every man knows. Like, and you just don't like it. It's just that inconsistency of logic thing where you're not really thinking about it coherently, and you're like, I support her right to do whatever she wants. And then when you're alone with just men, you're like, uh, you know, that women that have been with many men who have left are usually emotionally like negatively impacted by it. And you can't have both of those two things. I mean, you can be for their choice in, you can be for consent, but you can't celebrate both. And actually got into a big, not a big fight, but like there's a company called F1 Firearms. I'm going to call them out. And they manufacture like AR-15s, and I follow their page, and I saw that they had posted picture of a girl that she, her page is just one of those pages that if you follow them, then unfollow them. You'll get more done in your day. Trust me. Where just like posing provocatively and on Instagram, which I think is so much worse than even like where you have to seek out like pornography. When it comes to you, that's bad. And so I think that it's much worse that how people dress on Instagram and stuff like that on platforms that are just general platforms. That is much more detrimental to us, I think, than just having like, I don't know, like in isolation. It's like there used to be the brothel, and now everybody's just sleeping with each other and without commitment, and and shame. And it's so in some ways it's worse. It's like we've just that, and that at least was order, where like over here is where this stuff happens that like we should avoid, but then everywhere else like we pursue like familial order. Now we just, it doesn't, no matter where you go, like there's just chaos everywhere. And so that's much worse. But commented, and some guy had commented, he was like Catholic, and he was like, this is wrong. And everybody, a lot of people attacked him, except like a couple were like, dude, hang in there. Like, you're saying what's true. And I think he was right. And whoever runs that account of F1 Firearms was like, you're just body shaming like this girl, like, and he wasn't. He didn't even address the girl. He addressed the guy whose account it was, and he didn't say anything to the girl. He just said, and you shouldn't. Do not tell women what to wear unless they are yours. That's what I will say. But at the same time, like, make it known that modesty is important in a girl. It is. Like, you should say that. But then don't, like, go attack another girl for being immodest. But you can call out the men who are celebrating it, because that's much more productive, because they're, like, you'll cause, it's just not productive to call out the opposite gender for things. If women call out men for things, we'll cave and be like, you're right, even when we don't think that. And if we call out women for things, it causes them to always say that we're wrong, even if they know that we're right. So it's the opposite. We'll say that they're right, even though we know that they're not. And then they'll say that we're wrong, even though they internally know that we're right. So, and it causes everybody to double down and just become slaves to their instincts. It's not good. Call out the same gender. I'm not going to tell women how to structure their social situations, probably, because I can make, like, observations, but I don't really know what it's like to be in that circumstance. But I mean, I can see some things, but I know what it's like to be a man. And I can tell you, like I did before, every man knows from his conversations with friends over time that, like, it hurts women to sleep with them and leave. Like, it just does. And so we need to say that, like, not just when we're by ourselves. Like, we need to say that to everybody, because it's true. But I said, I saw that they were arguing. This Catholic guy and F1 Firearms manager, or whatever it is, that was running this account, and the guy said, who runs F1 Firearms, was like, you know, is it wrong to encourage a woman to, to be independent and exercise their First Amendment rights and their freedoms to wear what they want? And I just, like, realized that this was just becoming an inconsistent argument, and I commented, and I was like, you can believe I believe in the freedom to do destructive things. Okay? Like, I believe you should be able to do drugs of any kind that you want. You should be able to eat poison. And you should be able to do it, like, legally. And I would also not celebrate people eating poison or doing heroin. Like, I would not celebrate it. I would be like, I support your right, but, like, I hope you get through that and, better your life. And I would never encourage it with my own family. And I said to the guy, I was like, that the golden rule implies, if we want freedom, and which is as much freedom as possible, which is necessary to differentiation between consciousnesses, so it's very valuable, then we have to be pro-freedom, but you also have to simultaneously be consistent and ask yourself, just because you're for her right to dress that way and make an entire pornographic page, essentially, and that's what it is. It's just because, like, it has arbitrary rules of, like, what's showing and what's not. It's porn. And if you don't want your daughter, your wife, or your mother being a porn star, then you should never celebrate other girls doing it. That is the golden rule. And what happened when I asked him that? I was like, just answer this one thing. Do you want because this guy was like, some men here appreciate fine women, and I was like, let me ask you a question: would you appreciate it if that was your mom, your sister, or your wife, or your daughter? And you know what happened? The men deleted the entire conversation from the post because they realized, I'm sure, that I had just bested them. Like, and they also, though, don't want to give up celebrating that. And I know what it's like to, uh, to believe that they should be free to, do to dress how they want. I do believe that, but I also don't think that it's, we should ever encourage it. And you encourage it every time. Like I've said before here, guys, like, I haven't liked a bikini photo in like 4 years because you can't you can't actively encourage behavior that is not what you would want of your own. Like, that is the golden rule. Like, understand that there are aspects of gender dynamics that can like be addictive and things like that. I'm a human being, but there's difference between action and reaction. And so if you are like, it's like if you are choosing to like a photo, it's pretty much an actionary move. Sometimes it's reactionary, but like, at least for me, it's at this point it is actionary. But I did the other day. I was on Twitter, and I'll be honest, like, an ad popped up that's just one of those ones. And every time I go and I hit like not interested in this ad, and it just is one of those stupid ads that I don't even know what they're for, and they're just like, you know, some story where it shows some provocative-ish kind of photo. It's not that provocative, but it's like enough for the male mind to be like, whoa. And then it's like, you won't believe what happened next. And then like the reality is you open it up and it's like, there was a train crash in like, Sweden, and like it has nothing to do with the image. I'm always so good about it, and I always am like not interested in this ad because I know the algorithms, that even if you stop and you look at it, you're giving it like an incentive. So I always hit not interested. But I accidentally just was like, click. And then I realized immediately, I was like, why did I do that? And I got out of it, unclicked it. And I don't even know what it was for. It was for like nothing. It was for like, I don't know, some up and coming news site about nothing. And just like they all are. And I hit like not interested, but even that, like I got like 6 of them after that immediately, and I had to do not interested, not interested, not interested. So you have to like be good about this stuff. But my point is like, there are certain qualities that like in women that are very important to look for, and then there are certain qualities that they can change on and that they will change on. So like people will be like, don't find if you're conservative, they'll be like, don't find a liberal girl. Let me tell you something. The girls that I know that call themselves conservatives, the only difference from them and girls who are who call themselves liberals is nothing at this point. Like, there's nothing. That's just how they vote. There's literally no difference. And they act the same, dress the same, say the same things. Like, basically, they're just different talking points, but like said in the same way, which really means not a behavioral change. It's just my team is red team and your team is blue team. That's not two different things. That's one thing. And I am now, though, like, I will say this, like, politics doesn't matter at all. It doesn't matter. Like, I met Paulina, we were so politically opposite. She was so evasive of politics completely. And it was at a time in my life where I was really upset with people for not realizing like the political shit that we were in. And it was the first time I had started paying attention to politics, but it was really, really angering when you started to see like what I was seeing. And so I was angry at people for not caring. And also though, like we voted totally different, and she was afraid of guns, and her like like afraid of snakes, and like we she doesn't like horror movies. I told my brother, I was like, dude, I don't even watch horror movies anymore because like Paulina doesn't like horror movies. But then I thought more about it, and I was like, I don't think a good horror movie has come out like in I don't even know how long. So like, and what am I losing? And are they even really good for us to watch all the time? Like, probably not. And I'm somebody who's never really been like scared of movies, other than Signs, which is not even a horror movie; it's a drama. But like, those things don't matter. What matters is, are you good at like resolving conflict? But in how you deal with women is my point. Regard like everyone, man who's a man here, you have to treat them the way that you would want to your own to be treated. Like if she was already your wife, if she was already, if she was your sister or your mom or your daughter, like you need to approach the relationship from that perspective, because she is someone's daughter and sister, and future wife, inshallah. Like it means God willing. And like that's caring for, that's the golden rule applied. Not oh, I would never let my daughter walk out of the house like that. Oh, you know what, I'm gonna go and get an OnlyFans account. What are you doing? Stop. That's wrong. It's not the golden rule. It's literally the opposite of the golden rule. It's these rules for me and not for thee. It's the opposite. And like I said, we all have nature. Everybody sins. Not judging people for their sins, of like, and or their like instances of like failure. But there's a difference. There are degrees of activity that, and this is kind of relative to everybody's individual situation, but like, you don't, like, if you take a photo from someone's account that they posted and you shared it to your company's Instagram, that is quite an active thing to do. And I will say this as somebody who's guilty of it. I literally filmed like the first, I don't even know how many Will Witt videos, like 30. And I've told this story before. I just realized that like, one, I had just chosen like this still image of Will talking to two girls because it was just like, it was the best image there was, and for many reasons. It just like, it was framed well, the people were attractive, and just, it was a good looking thumbnail. I thought it wasn't to be clickbaity. They weren't like wearing not barely anything. But then eventually I realized it was a dramatic difference in click rate if in organic click rate, if it was like an attractive woman on the thumbnail. So like it became this thing like, Tyler, which one are you gonna choose? And then we got this letter in the mail. It's so funny when people are like, we're gonna get letters. It's like, we got letters. Literally, we got letters. And like, I read this letter, and it was this guy, and he was a father, and he was talking to us, and he's like, I have noticed that it is very consistent, and it was very consistent. And I take full responsibility for it because I put them up. I filmed them. I chose the thumbnails. Like, I was completely responsible for it all. And he was like, you are choosing the best, like the most provocatively dressed women, which wasn't really what I was choosing. I was just choosing like the most attractive seeming ones, which if you don't know someone, then the only thing that you can go on with them um, is like physical appearance, and that's like not just applied to, objective beauty, but like sexiness, which is different. That's something it's a it's a contextual aspect of beauty. It's a subjective beauty that only lasts like the first like 40 years of some, like, not the first 40 years, like I don't even know, like 30 years of someone's life, not in the beginning, and then it starts, when you can start having kids, and then it ends when you can't anymore. And it's like, for the most part at least. But then beauty is something that is everywhere. Like it just, beauty is not about like, it's not about sex, but sexiness is about sex, obviously. And so that's why it's contextual, because it's contextual to when, like people are like biologically, like when it's like useful to have sex. And so, but I was just realized that I was just like picking all these, and that was a very active thing for me to do. It wasn't like I didn't have a choice. It wasn't like I was just reacting. Like I was like, I planned it. And then, but he said, I have sons, and you are who subscribe to PragerU, and I want them to learn about the things that you guys were teaching. And at this time, we weren't so hyper political. We were very much different than they are now. And they were focused on morals a lot. And he called us out. And you know what? Everyone in the room who was a man, and it was just a room full of men, we were all like, you know what? He's right. And I never did it again. It doesn't mean I like purposely avoided, ever showing like what, I don't know, anything like a woman who was not wearing a burqa, but like it was different. It was different, and it had a different impact, Now they go with like thumbnails that are animated and stuff like that, so it doesn't really matter. But this was like the early days, and so I get why people use like attractive women in advertising, but honestly, sex is the lowest hanging fruit in advertising that you can possibly do. It's the lowest hanging fruit in any kind of like pursuits, and it is always a violation of the golden rule, unless you literally are you are comfortable encouraging your daughter, wife, mother, sister in essentially becoming a porn star. Like if you're not willing to encourage that, not just like, not disown them for that, because I don't think you disown your kids even if they do something like that. You can't really disown your kids. Even in disowning them, you're admitting ownership. Like you can't really disown. But like when you are interacting with women, you gotta treat them like that, and you gotta hold yourself to it if they're not. Paulina held me to it. It was the first girl I've ever dated that held me to it, who was like, what are your intentions? And I didn't really know what my intentions were at the time, but I was like, I did have a weird feeling like I could marry her the first day that I met her, and I wasn't expecting that, wasn't looking for it, that was my failure, really. I mean, but I was a secularist at the time. Like that's usually the default status, is you're not looking for marriage. But I had set it up. I was like, I got this weird feeling I could marry this girl I went on a date with. But so because I had that feeling when she asked me what my intentions were, I was comfortable admitting like, right now I just want to see how well we get along and have, enjoy my time with you. But I'm not, opposed to this leading to marriage. And if we don't, if we do get along, then I'm fine with it leading to marriage. It wasn't like I was like, I'd put a limit on the relationship. if you think you will not marry a girl, don't even don't even engage with them at all, like physically at all. Like you shouldn't. Like obviously the ideal people say is like, and I agree that it is the ideal, is like waiting till marriage, but like definitely not good to get into a relationship at all with somebody who you are not like pretty confident could work out. And I dated two people for over a year each. Like one of them was like almost 3 years, who I knew I was never gonna marry. Knew it. And I told one, I had even told uh, someone that I was like, I'm moving. Like I really enjoy my time with you, but I'm moving. But the thing is like that was a fake excuse. I was lying. I wasn't. I was lying to myself first and foremost, and to her. It was, if you are with the right person, you move with them. Like people move. Doesn't just because you're moving isn't an excuse. Like my brother though, when I asked him the same questions, he was like, "Well, I don't want to hold her back." Like so many men have said that. I'm even guilty of saying that. That is the biggest crock of shit ever. Do not ever say that. You are lying to yourself and you know it. And that's what I told him. I was like, you're so lying to yourself. And that's when he started laughing. Because I was like, no man is like, you know what? She's the perfect girl for me. But I don't want to hold her back. I'd rather she go meet some other guy and go to, Europe and eat some pizza. What are you talking about? That's so stupid. It makes no sense. And that's that thing that I've told you, multiple times on this stream is like, it's a breakdown in internal consistency. You're applying rules here that should be applied everywhere, but you're excluding them here or changing them here because you don't want them to apply there because it implies responsibility. So I'm going to say when to bring it back, like, again, to find the right girl or to know whether or not you have the right one, if you're good at resolving conflict with her and you're already with a girl and you find her physically attractive and you have the same goals and you're good at resolving conflict and differences, it's not even conflict, it's just differences. Sometimes you have an opinion, they have an opinion, and it's not conflict. It's just like you figure out a way to understand each other. And that's really what the goal is, like not getting past the moment, but understanding each other better at the end of the moment. And if you're good at that, marry her immediately. And I really mean that, like ASAP. Everybody, not everybody I know, but the amount of people that I know that are having issues, who have had trouble having children, is probably so much higher than what our grandparents would have ever experienced, because we are just so much older, and the hormones that we're exposed to via plastics and stuff like that are making people go through puberty even earlier, and we're still waiting even later to have children. What are you waiting for? Like, people will say things like, I don't have enough money, and it's like, that's that whole thing of like, how is last? F the how for now. It's like, oh, I'm not going to marry that girl. I'm going to let her. Like, you can't claim that you really, really care about a girl and that you would, you can't claim, I mean, I honestly, I say this to some degree of truth, but I also understand there's some complications to it, but like, to truly love someone is an action, and that means to do good for them. And if you are with somebody who you claim to love, but if you're not committing to them, like, then it's not really love. It's not. It's you like them a lot, and like you would love them in certain situations, but like you don't say I love you if you don't love them in all situations, and including the situations where it's really inconvenient and against your nature. Like there will I thought about this, like I see so many women, and it bothers me so much at first. Like when you start down this path of understanding our gender issues, you start and you're a man, you start off being really pissed at women. By the end of it, you are so disappointed in men. But you and towards the end of it, and then you realize like, gosh, I feel for everybody, but I do need to tell men to step it up because they're the ones that need to be told to step it up. Not just told to step it up, shown to step it up. Like shown. Like they need to men learn by seeing examples of other people. And I've been trying to like model this as I've realized like you can't just talk about it. Everybody who's, conservative will say, you gotta wait till marriage. How about abstinence? How about this? How about that? And then like none of them are married. Where's the married influencers? How many of them is there? Like not enough. But like looking for something. This is the most masculine moment of your entire life as a man. Is literally when you kneel, which is insane to say. It's a superposition of experience. There is nothing more active and more self self-motivated where you're like, you know what? I'm choosing this. Unless you're just like doing it because you're afraid to lose the person. Don't do that. But if you have a good relationship, you don't think they're about to leave for any reason, and you know things are good, especially if you are not in the ideal situation where you waited until marriage, especially then, and you still choose to do this, it is the most manly thing you could possibly do in your life. You're choosing to care for another person for the rest of your life or theirs. Like, and that choice goes against your very nature too. Like, it's absolute biological core, I guess you could say. And especially in this environment that we're in, where just like, you know, where our blended gender environment is basically shoving extra options down in everybody's face constantly, and it's making us be like, well, look at how many people are out there. And then we get mad when women are like, oh, like they're searching for the richest guy. It's like, well, you're not getting married because you're waiting for the best looking girl. It's like, gotta realize there's reciprocity happening there. But do this. I'm showing the photo so that like it's like not just me lecturing you. This was very hard. I waited way too long. And it was for all the reasons that I described, and also for other reasons that were unique to our situation when it comes to. I just had to understand Judaism and Christianity and Islam's interactions and what they truly are defined, how they're truly defined, and in order to like make that decision. Because I was a secular atheist or anti-theist before I met her, and she was like a practicing Christian, like a faithful Christian, not just like family goes to church, but like prays before every meal. And thank God I came around, like, because first thing she said to me was like, I need like a spiritual leader, and I was like, I can do that. It's like, let me tell you, if there was ever a moment of F the hell for now, that was it. Because I was absolutely like not in touch with any kind of theological thoughts at the moment, at the time, or spirituality. I would have said, well, I'm a spiritual person, but like, who the heck isn't? Like, but that means nothing. It's like saying I believe in higher power. Okay, what does that mean? But uh, you know, obviously I had a theophany and like definitely the spiritual leader. But you can't be the spiritual leader unless you are making choices. And if you are not um, choosing to do something, you're not making choices. Like, what choices are you making? How can you lead if you're not making choices and you're just reacting to everyone around you and the news? Can't do it. So, uh, and we, you know what's, I've talked about this before, is like, it's so empowering to get married or engaged. Almost the same thing as far as like how it impacts you a little bit. Like there is a difference, like I'm sure, and I'll talk about it. But like you truly become one after marriage, but you commit to being one when you are engaged. And like there's a reason like I haven't like had Pauline on the show, and it's because like, and I've told her this, it's like I don't want to talk like us to talk about our lives together until it's like legitimized, I guess. Like if that makes sense. Like I'm waiting. It's not that I don't want to. I do want to. I'm just like want it to be after, July. But which is when I'm getting married. But then she'll be on the show. We're going to have a whole stream on marriage, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to talk about like our experience along the way, because people have not seen anything. They're not seeing. I'm live streaming my wedding. People we don't do anything publicly that we need to, and then we do everything publicly that we don't need to. It's like we donate publicly. We, which is, there's value in, any mitzvah, but like, people keep, this is another thing, like people have, especially men, this is a problem for men. And this woman posted this the other day. It was so funny. I was laughing so hard. I saved it. She was like, how come every woman on Twitter has their real name and every man goes by like toilet paper roll 35 or something like that? And I was like, that's not true. And it's because men are avoiding being doxxed by women. Guess what? You can't be doxxed by women if you commit to one and don't have to worry about the rest of their opinions. But and you take yourself out of the dating market. But that's very empowering. And then also it is monetarily valuable to get married, not because of tax breaks, but because you now can use it's like when a nucleus of an atom is a neutron and a proton are bound, they weigh slightly less than when they're separated. Same thing happens with humans, but it's economic. You absolutely make more money. You have more money left over when you are with another person. I've never had more money in my account in my life other than after I moved in with Paulina, and it's and I was paying less in rent like before. And there's lots of reasons for that. She buys groceries that we actually, then cook and eat. And men will just like go out, and a lot of times, sometimes we'll cook, but like, it's just not the same. We don't have the same relationship with it, but there's so many things that change in your life that just become like more cost saving. So you can like, and also it's free to get married. You can make it expensive, but like it's free to get married. You could go find somebody, pay them $100 to get certified. and then like go get married on the porch of your parents' house or something. Like you can get married. It costs nothing. It's not like so many men. There's another fake excuse. It's like, I'm just waiting till I make more money. Why? She doesn't care. Otherwise, she would have waited to be with you until you made more money. It's like you're just making excuses and lying to yourself, and you're just holding out just in case there's another girl. I tell you, there will always be. And I told you, I've been frustrated with men, and I'm like looking around, and I see all these single women that, like, there's no reason why they wouldn't be a great wife. And I had this disagreement with my Muslim friend when we first started discussing things, and I actually tend to agree with Islam on most things, but the one place where I really kind of disagreed at the very beginning of it was that they allow for polygamy. And I was like, this sounds like it's going to exclude men from being like, it's good when a man has an option to have a girl. Like you don't, it's like at a party, you don't want it to be like 20 guys and like 10 girls. Life is a party. And like, you don't want it to be 20 guys and 10 girls, because then those other guys are going to be frustrated and cause, problems in society. If you allow for polygamy, that kind of thing can happen if it's unrestricted. And in the past, it's been largely unrestricted. Like Genghis Khan had like hundreds of wives or something, which that's not really a wife. Those are baby making machines to you at that point. It's dehumanizing. It's not a marriage. A marriage is humanizing. And so it's soulifying. Maybe we should say that instead of humanizing. It's soulifying. It's acknowledging of the soul of a human. If you have 200 wives, that is not acknowledging of the soul of another human. But, and if you're choosing not to get married because you just, like sleeping around, even though and you confess your friends privately that like women who've been around like usually feel hurt by it, that's desoulifying. But like, he told me that Islam allows for polygamy because it's better that women share a husband than they be left out in the cold with no one to commit to them and nobody to have a family with them and stuff like that. And I thought about that, and he was like, he's like, men, not as many men as time has been going on, the amount of men who are worthy of marriage is decreasing. A lot of men complain to me about women all the time, and I get it, but like, you have to be worthy of a woman to keep one, to get one, and it's not about the way you look. It's not about how much money you have. You can get girls if you are very good looking and have tons of money. They will not stick around. They will use up what they can, and then they will leave. And they will find somebody else with more money and who's better looking. That's not... Why do you want those girls? So you can desoulify them too. So just as they desoulify you, just like as they objectify you and turn you into just like a bank account, and you just turn them into like, I don't know, like that's, why is that good? So, but just do nice things for girls. Like, I didn't even think anything of this, but Paulina told me way later that the most impressive thing is like about me to her was on like, it was our second time hanging out, or third time maybe. She told me she was building a desk and painting her room, and I hate painting, but I like building things. And I was like, do you want any help? And like, I meant that. She lived in a house where she had a roommate it was a girl, and it was like a Christian sorority that was like really strict. So it was like, I was not going over there with any intentions other than I'm gonna go over there and paint the walls and build the desk. And I did it, and I did it because I cared for her, but like it stuck with her till now that she talks about it. It's like, I didn't realize it had that much of an impact. That's all you need to do. just need to help them build things and paint things and accomplish their goals. And that's like what it means to love someone. It's not like you have infatuated feelings. Love is not. Love is a superposition between a feeling and an action. It's not. It's not. It's not a feeling fundamentally. Feeling is emergent. The action is fundamental. And when people say today, well, we just fell out of love. You know how many people are going to fall out of infatuation with each other when they get married and they stay married for 80 years, ideally? Everyone. Not a soul ever in a successful marriage doesn't have multiple years where they're like, I really don't like my spouse. It's going to happen. You have to know it's going to happen. And you still have to love that person, and you cannot like them and still love them. And then eventually you will get past not liking them again, and you will experience that feeling of liking them or loving them again. But you have to get past it by doing nice things for them always, even when they're, annoying you. This is marriage. But we have such a twisted idea of it. It's like, well, how do we know it's the right one? Because you make it the right one. And if it works well enough and then you make it work the rest of the way, it's the right one. It's not about well, I need to find the person that I'm never going to have go years of not really liking. No, you will go those years. Trust me, I saw my parents go through it. They're still married, and they get along much better now than I've probably ever seen them. And there was a point where I thought they were getting divorced, and that's normal. That's just part of marriage. I don't know if thinking about divorce is normal, but not liking your spouse, totally normal. I've seen marriages bounce back from people who they were married for 50 years and then we're gonna get divorced. They guy moved out, ended up dating the best friend of his wife, and then ended up before they got divorced, they decided to give it one more go. Now they get along better than they ever have. They probably will never get divorced. They're in their almost 70s. I mean, they might be in their 70s actually now. They're probably never getting divorced. That's called success, not failure. So it's this idea of is it the right one is much easier to figure out than we make it. Where if you're looking for a beam of light to come down, this is one of the things that I realized as a man and wasn't really expecting, because Hollywood messes with our minds. Even as a man, I was expecting a beam of light to come down, figuratively, and you just know that's the one. And I almost had that, more so than almost anyone else, because on my first date I was I feel like I'm gonna marry this girl for some reason. But it wasn't because I even just really enjoyed our conversations. I don't even remember much of our conversations. I just remember that she told me she was the oldest of 4, and so am I, and we're the same age, and we came from similar families, and there were just weird synchronicities that I had never seen. And that's what caused me to be it seems like I'm the opposite of this person, but the same. And that was weird. I wasn't all into symmetries yet. But I still saw it. And I'm not even saying you have to have that, but even though I did have that, I never got some kick in the ass that was you need to seriously marry this girl. And it was that I had realized that I had figured out what I needed regarding religious traditions or the theological traditions, Abrahamic traditions, and that was very important to me. And then from there, I had already worked out that was the last thing I needed to figure out. Everything else I knew within 3 months. If you don't have religious questions and differences to work out between the two of you, you should know within a year. Maybe you probably know in less than a year, and you definitely should like be getting married in a year. And I've been saying this a lot on Twitter, kind of been going on a binge about it. Some girl actually like messaged me and she was like, is your solution to all of society's problems just to tell them to get married? And I was like, yep. But um, I never finished my thought about like Twitter though. It's like men, and to relate this to like how we treat some women versus other women, some people versus other people. Um, you have to treat people the way that you would want to be treated, or you would want your own to be treated. I'm seeing even Candace Owens, who I like her. I've worked with her. She started cancel Chrissy Teigen for some sin that Chrissy Teigen committed in the past. It doesn't even matter what it is. I'm not a fan of Chrissy Teigen. I know barely anything about her other than she just kind of seems like she says a lot of things that I probably disagree with. Other than that, I don't really know anything about her. But I saw that they're all calling for her canceling because she's called for the canceling of others, and thought about it, and I was like, that's not doing what that's not the golden rule. Because, and people were like, well, that's what they do to us. It's like, do you realize this is just now just a loop of just destruction? Because now there's no grace to break a chain, and you like treating, when you're like, I am going to I'm going to share a girl in basically like participating in something I would never want my daughter or wife to participate in. I'm going to share her to my Instagram feed to get a rise out of and reactions out of, the crowd. And then I would never let my daughter walk out of the house dressed like that. It's like, you're going to break down this. This is not the golden rule. Society falls apart without that golden rule. Like, without that, there's no incentive to even, there's no possible way of coming back from destruction without grace. There just isn't. And that's true of our interpersonal relations, not just like thinking about it in a messianic context. It's true in a messianic context because it's true in personal context, and it's also true in cellular context and atomic contexts, and there's only one pattern. But you have to treat a girl the same way as you should want to be treated, and men should really focus on not being anonymous online. It's like in your interaction with other people, especially. Like, everybody that I know on Discord, every single person besides one, two, that's it, only two, have anonymous accounts. And I understand exactly why. Because society is a ruthless beast, and it will take your words out of context and rip you apart in front of everyone. And I understand both what that feels like when it happens, and also that it happens. But I don't give a shit that there are articles online blasting me and calling for my firing because I excused racism and anti-Semitism when I never did. And the reason why I don't care is because I know it's fake. And the people that matter in my life know it's fake. And I already have a girl, and she knows it's fake because she was there with me when it happened. When I said everything that they're calling out. So, I'm free from it. But you have to be settled in order to be free a little bit, like to increase your freedom. And once you do that though, like I just have such a very different like relationship with social media, whereas like I don't post things on social media that I wouldn't want people to hear. I post things on social media that I would want people to hear, or that I would want people to see. And sometimes those things aren't perfect, but like if I second guess myself and then I change my mind, I will delete something pretty quickly. Like at this point, I think people should take that approach to just to life in general, because you know what that is? It means that you are trying to commit to treating people on social media the way you would want your own treated. This is what I mean by like the whole canceling thing is like we got to treat people the way we would want to be treated. And I said it on my Twitter. I was like, I don't know anything about Chrissy Teigen, but I do know that she likes to, she's always calling for people's canceling. And that sucks. But if grace only applies to people when they are doing what you want them to do, then it's not grace. And if you aren't willing to give people grace, then you are desoulifying them and you've turned them into just your tools. You put up with people's flaws if you love them. You do. There's no other way to do it. And that's why, like, it's not so hard to choose a spouse, especially if you don't have the deepest theological questions that you need to answer that are differences between the two of you. Some people have those, very few. I happen to have been one of those. It took many years actually to figure out those answers, but I also, as soon as I figured out those answers, I bought a ring within like a month, and I would have done it way earlier. But like that's my recommendation. Definitely, like if you, but my friend though who's Muslim, like he was like, Islam puts a cap of wives on 4, which I think if you're going to engage in polygamy, 4 is the number of completeness, as I say here all the time. That's just apparent, and so it makes sense that there would be, that would be the objective limit if there was an objective limit. And I think that that's the only objective limit that can exist. There's no other number that signifies completeness other than 1. That's it, 1 and 4. And like if men there's 2 options. Either the men that are willing to get married. If men in much higher numbers don't start getting married, then the men who are willing to get married are going to, in much greater numbers, have to seriously consider taking multiple wives, which is not an ideal, because people idealize it and they'll be like, oh, multiple wives, like Genghis Khan, he had no responsibility to those women. Like he probably didn't remember all their names. It's 200 women. These are concubines. They're not wives. Adding an extra spouse is adding of extra responsibilities and considerations of like another soul. Like it's a lot, and it's not the ideal, but it is better than like the amount of women that are just experiencing nonsense right now. Like how is Tommy Lahren not married? I don't know. Like, how is every not married conservative girl not married? If every girl out there saying that marriage is essential, why are they not married? The reason they're not married is because of men not marrying them. And like, if you don't believe in marriage, that's fine. Don't get married. But if you do believe in marriage, you need to get married. Like, there's no like, when have you had enough women where you're like, now I'm ready? Like, there is never going to be enough women. Like, this is why, like, if you have 200 wives, you're gonna want 300 wives because they're just concubines. But like, there is no limit on that. That's like on that male nature of like just wanting variety. So if you're waiting till you no longer feel like attracted to other people around you, like you're waiting for infinity to manifest as a static number, and it doesn't. So like that is kind of the perfect way to like tie everything back and wrap it up, but that's so true. And like, you're looking for something that doesn't exist. There is no moment where you are like, you know what, I don't even want those girls anymore. It's like, no. You're a man, stop. But be a man and take control of that. Control of it doesn't mean you change you can just at will change how you feel. It does mean that you can start moving towards, you know, what you think is the objectively good goal. My wife sounds like she could be a spy or a CIA agent. Okay, let's see what's going on here. Now I'm gonna get off. I hope that answered like your question a little bit. If you're good at understanding each other and getting through like misunderstandings and potential conflicts by understanding each other and talking it out, that is number one. Number two is like having aligned goals. Like you need both of those simultaneously. If you have those two things, put a ring on it. Like I'm assuming you're with the girl because you already find her physically attractive, and like she's already judged you as like, I mean, usually as like a worthy suitor if you have not broken up and gotten back together multiple times and had like turmoil like that. If you've been together for a while, she's already judged you as like, this is a good thing. But I will say this, I think that it's very important to be blunt and like ask them, like tell them that you want to get married, or like how I did was I asked Paulina multiple times, if I bought you a ring, would you, and asked you to marry me, would you say yes? And instead of saying like, I'm gonna ask you, I asked her if she would say yes multiple times, because it's gonna damage you and her, and you're gonna spend a lot of money that you're gonna have to just return, or she's gonna keep, or something, you know, like know that you're gonna get a yes before you do it, and then do it. But you're never gonna have that moment of like, now I'm ready. You won't. The only thing that will make you kind of feel like that is when you're having FOMO because everybody else is married and nobody wants to go to the bars with you anymore. And I mean, I'm not saying that you're like that, but I'm just, you know, contrasting and comparing single life versus not in our world. Well, our previous BC world, if you get what I'm saying. Some people get married first. Never been my thing. But if you like to settle down and you love each other, then go for it. Humans are beholden to moral law because we have access to objective truth. We have the capacity to act true and good rather than reactively. The image of God. Yes, that's true. Yeah, you are right, dude. Resolving conflict is huge for marriage. Also, having a stable career or being a provider is important. Yeah, it is important, but let me tell you, like, people lose their jobs and you don't, like, you need to prove that you're somebody who is capable of taking care, but that doesn't mean that, like, you need to show that you have a big bank account. They are not the same thing. The most impressive things I've ever done for my fiance were I laid the floors in her last apartment, and I didn't know how to do it, and I didn't want to do it, and I thought that we were going to try and it was going to fail, and then she was going to just return it all and we wouldn't have to do it. I was like really counting on it, and but then she was like, no, I'm doing this, so you're either like helping me or, you know, not, or I'm going to get somebody else to do it. And when I tried it, it actually wasn't bad at all, and I figured it out. It took some, like, you know, figuring out, but once I did figure it out, it wasn't bad. I put down wood floors. It's like, I never thought I'd put down wood floors in my life. I put down wood floors for that girl. That matters so much more than if you drive a nice car. I drive a shit car. I drive a shit car. I will say that. Like, I'm very grateful for it. It was a gift from my grandparents, and, you know, it needs a lot of work. At this point, it was fine when I got it, but I lived in LA for 6 years, driving 80 miles a day. You know, that's what happens. But it's a 90s, like 90s Nissan. It's not like a great car. You know how much that mattered to me, like finding a girl, never in my life did it matter. Like in college, I didn't even have a car. Every girl I knew that I, dated had a car. So guys were like, oh, you need to have a nice car. You need to look good. Can't be balding. And you need to have tons of money. No, bro, you just don't want to put in the effort, or you're like afraid of putting in the effort. Or you just, I don't know, you haven't seen that it's possible. Something is wrong with you. Like, you can fix it, but like, you gotta fix it. I just can't do the marriage thing, but I definitely love and adore girls. I don't like getting attached. I'm happy for people that meet their soulmate, though. Dude, it sounds like you're just a man and you should just get married. Like, you don't like getting attached. Like, I don't know, like, I'm not like trying to like bring you down or anything, but like, I'm just telling you, if you are attracted to the opposite gender, you should get married. It's a responsibility, not a choice. And you can say that you like girls a lot, and I trust you. I believe you, because I don't know very many men that don't like girls a lot. But to love is an action, and it is by doing good for people. And sleeping with them and leaving does not do good for women. It hurts them to their very soul. It takes part of them away. And it makes it so that they have a really hard time bonding going forward. It does, like, it, and yes, it impacts each one a little differently or to a different degree, but the secular world would laugh at, like, when like religious people would use the metaphor of like a piece of tape, and you use the piece of tape and then you take it off, and like you can use it again a few times, but every time it just gets like harder and harder for that tape to stick. That is women. And their sense of, like, their very being depends on their ability to stick, and you should not destroy that. Like, if you don't want to marry a girl, don't just avoid her. Like, if you're like, that's a girl that I find really attractive, but I would never marry her, don't sleep with her. Don't date her. Just don't. And I know that's hard sometimes. I'm a man. I get it. But it's easier when you're actually actively also pursuing someone that you would do that with. When I walk in on what she's watching, I want to jump out a window within about 5 minutes. What is that your girl is watching? Was there like a comment that I missed about like Phantom's girlfriend being like watching like CIA like surveillance or something like that? But I agree with you. And I question all the choices that led me to be with someone who enjoys it when I. Yeah, it looks like I don't see a comment that was being responded to. She watches garbage TV shows. Dude, Paulina watches The Bachelor, and it is trash, and she knows it's trash, and she watches it. Women watch The Bachelor. I actually did watch with her like a show called Love Is Blind, and no, or what's it called? Married at First Sight. That's what it was. And I think I watched both, and I only watch them because she does with her, and like, these are the sacrifices that you make. And then she watches what was the show we just watched? Watching Ozarks now, but like that starting that was due to my pressure, but now she's super into it. But we watched that new show on Netflix about going to Mars. She only watched it for me, and like if she does that for me, I will watch. I don't know, whatever she wants other than The Bachelor. I won't watch The Bachelor, but I will watch. I watched like Married at First Sight with her, and let me tell you, that is a much better show than The Bachelor. It's actually about like reality and marriage. I highly recommend watching that with your girlfriend. Yeah, like you will see important things. I think like it's actually real too. Like it's they have it's like not, and it really, I'm not saying that not things aren't made to be more dramatic and stuff like that because it's reality TV, but they're it's very different. Like they have like a psychologist and a pastor, and they're trying to find couples that they match, thinking that they will be the best matches for each other. And like the reality is, you don't have to usually inject that much drama into those situations, and they just that will just manifest. It's not fake like The Bachelor, because it's actually a real relationship, and it is an interesting show. But women do like trash TV, and you know what? Like that's just fine, I guess. Like you can't like if my brother was like, I can't I don't want to marry my girlfriend because she watches like The Bachelor, and I don't even like those shows. It's like, okay, you just rolled out like 90% of women. Like you don't have to watch it with them. TikTok makes me want to gouge my eyes out. I just deleted it. I deleted it after 2 months. I couldn't take it. So I get it. I literally could not take it. So it was just controlling, and I could see it, and it was like mind control, and just because I pinched myself in my like Leatherman. But I get it. TikTok, it's like when Reels were first introduced, and they were just pushing women on to men's feed who, were not looking for that. And I just had to delete the entire thing. I almost had to delete all of Instagram, which would have really sucked. But they changed algorithms or changed the setup so that I never see Reels anymore. Thank God. I literally would have left. Like, I am a man. I need to be able to focus on things that are not scantily clad women who I will never meet. And if algorithms shove them down your throat and you have no choice but to look at them, just leave the platform. Welcome to Costco, I love you. Exactly. I love that movie. Welcome to Costco, I love you. We are honestly at the point where we are dumber than the people in that movie. At this point, I'm really pretty serious. At least collectively, not individually, but collectively, yeah. They at least, I don't know. They seem to get along better than we do. The only ones who are conservatives are the ones who don't care about politics, so they don't label themselves. Yeah, my fiance was conservative, but never called herself that. She didn't care about politics. She always dressed modestly. It's valuable. I tell her that all the time. But marry the modest ones, but before they become immodest, because they're becoming more and more immodest to attract your attention. They're reacting to you, and then you're reacting to them, and then nobody's leading. You have to lead by like breaking the chain and being like, I picked this one. Done. And some girl posted something kind of like provocative, she's a conservative influencer, I guess you could say, today on Twitter, but it was like within the context of marriage, and honestly, I don't have a problem with that. She's not married, but she was like, this wife goals or something like that, and it was about pleasing a man, and I saw it, and I in all the comments it was like, you'd be a great wife, blah 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 blah, and you know what? It sucks that not a single one of them is willing or worthy of getting that girl. Not one. Who the is gonna man up and be like, that one right there, I'm going for it. Like really going for it. Not like I want to have that one for like a few weeks and then leave. I'm going for it. It's like until that guy arrives, women will continue to just pursue as much attention from the multiplicity as they can, from as many guys as they can, instead of from one guy, because not a single one of them is actually committing anything to her. They're just, it's like the whole relationship is about them, and like they enjoy looking at her. That leads to very little value being added to her, which means she needs lots of them. But if you give all of you to somebody, then they don't need to seek it from anyone else. Only one. She just watches. Oh, yeah. Golden rule premise thoughts. Do you become what you despise in your enemy in order to defeat your enemy? No, you never become. You do the golden rule. You treat, even when they treat you like shit, you treat them well. That doesn't mean you don't defend yourself, but like, you only defend yourself in a manner in which you would want to be defended against. Like, you know, when I say, like, if somebody broke into my house and threatened my life, I would shoot them. That's the golden rule, because I would expect and would want somebody to do the same thing if I did that. Now, the thing is I choose not to do that because that's the context that's making that make sense. If I chose to break into people's houses, then I wouldn't want them to shoot me, but at the same time, I wouldn't want them breaking my house. So at that very point, you're already breaking the golden rule when you're breaking into somebody's place. So, you know, the golden rule is the only thing that allows for cohesiveness of logic across all spectrums. This idea of like, well, they do it. And let me tell you, like, the people that told me this today, like, high-level positions in the conservative world were like, they do this to us, so, you know, I'm starting to believe in cancel culture. Okay, great. Good job. And I believe in exclusion. That's why America needs to fall apart, so we can actually form, like, structures that allow us to exclude people who we can't be governed by, or at least consensually. But, like, like my social media platform that I'm working on, no one can be banned. Posts can be muted, which means that they only appear to you, and it tells you, like, every time. It's not like it's hidden. But you could have every single post that you post muted. And or outright, maybe muted means like deleted even for you, but like it will be told. It's not like it's hidden like it is on the other platforms, but you'll never be kicked off. And then as soon as you upload something that is perfectly like acceptable, it gets as much attention as anyone else. You're not going to lose points. Like, you don't throw out souls. At least we don't. God can do what he wants. We can't, because not a single one of us is good enough to deserve what we have. None of us. The golden rule is golden. Golden means eternal. That's what gold means. Gold doesn't tarnish. It is eternal. That's what's special about it, is when you find it at the bottom of the ocean 10,000 years later and it looks exactly the same as the day it fell in. That means eternal. It's the rule that you have to follow. It's very hard. Sometimes we fail, but you should always try. And if you actually do abandon it and you're like, well, you know what? It's like, you will become exactly what you hate. And then what good did you bring to the world? You just replaced that tyrant that you hated with the exact same tyrant, except now you're the tyrant who's doing exactly what you hated, and you're probably going to hate yourself. So, like, you made the world worse for everybody, including yourself. Modern day equivalent, Israel and Palestine. Do you defend an eye for an eye? Israel and Palestine is the tension point between the totality of the human struggle, and it is between an immovable objects, Jews, and I say that as a Jew, and an unstoppable force, which is Islam. And I say that believing in its truth. Like, so I think that in that instance, what's going to happen there is going to blow people's minds a little bit at some point, but it's going to be a merger more than anything else in a way that's totally unexpected. But the tech has to catch up to allow for citizenship to be slightly decoupled from locality, and so that, or nationality can be decoupled a little bit from locality, so that people can move freely, much more freely, and not impact the politics of the place that they're moving through. That's what's important. Otherwise, we do have to put up, like, I understand when people are like, build the wall, here and there and whatever. It doesn't matter. Like, you have to apply the golden rule, which means, like, whatever you think is acceptable here has to be acceptable there. Whatever you think is acceptable there has to be acceptable here. I think walls, both places, are band-aids that don't heal anything. They might stop dirt for a little bit, but, like, they don't heal anything. You have to heal, which means, like, fixing the problems that are causing the tension, which is when movement of people physically has hugely political implications, and it doesn't have to, because a nation is a people, not a place, and that's the truth. So as soon as that is, like, matured, which means, like, it's going to be put on the blockchain. Your citizenship is going to be digitized onto a blockchain for any true nation that manifests, Israel being one of them. But others are going to pop up. I don't think any others are true right now, but that's why they're all the rest are kind of falling apart. But that's good, though, because the others will be able to, be just as true. They just need to adopt the same rules that are making a nation a true nation, which is 2 degrees of freedom, which means allowing for converts or naturalization of people who want to assimilate, because you can't join a group in order to change the group. You got to join a group in order to, because you identify with it. And right now we just move people around, and, like, we don't think about any of this stuff, and it's just chaos. But, like, you got to just wait out the chaos a little bit and not be like, and realize that sometimes for something new to come about, like, the old structures have to fall apart, and that doesn't mean you go and you torch the town. Don't do that. It means, like, just have patience and know and trust in truth. I don't know why nobody says that, trust in truth, or I don't hear it. It's like, I like those, like, alliterations always. It's a good one. I think any solution that dehumanizes Israelis or Palestinians is not a solution. And I know Israelis and Palestinians who are friends of mine who do end up dehumanizing the other side, and it's not good. It's really wrong. And it's not the golden rule at all. It's the opposite. Like, you can't just stick up for victims, because the people that you perceive as a victim, because you perceive them as a victim. You can't just stick up for victors because you like to side with winners. Everyone is a victor and a victim simultaneously. And you need to stick up for what's right and what's true, what's honoring of somebody's soul in the way that you would want to honor your own. And this start shopping for a ring. I'm gonna have to get off the stream, honestly. I'm very proud of you. That's very amazing. I'm literally, like, a little emotional about it. That I think that's great. So yeah, let me know, like, any just, like, questions. But know what she likes. Like, I knew what Paulina liked. I mean, Paulina's, like, a little intense. Like, she had, like, a whole, like, document that she sent me of, like, I like this, and like, as far as designs, it wasn't like you better get me this size ring. It was nothing like that, but it was like, this is the style that I like because she was a wedding photographer, so she's photographed thousands of rings. She's thought a lot about it, but know generally what they would like. And if you need help with a diamond, I know a guy. To embrace the stereotype, that's definitely true. But that's awesome. But are there any final questions? Otherwise, I've been on for a while, much longer than I thought I would be. But that is like I don't think anybody's comment can top Phantoms. That was like the best. But anyways, I will be back here tomorrow, 7:20, which really means 7:30, provided YouTube is not having the same. Yeah, I will help you with the diamond. We could talk about it on Discord. But 7:30 probably, provided there's no problems. But I will see you guys later, and peace.